2018 morning session of the Portland City Council. Sue, please call the board.
Fritz.
Here.
Fish.
Here.
Saltzman.
Here.
Udaley.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here.
Good morning. Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and needs to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. If you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Disruptive conduct such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Wow, that's harsh. I'm glad I don't have to say all that. So, Sue, could you please read the communications? It's my understanding that all 5 of the communication slots are from Accelerator. Would you like to come up together?
Item 263, 264, 65, 66, and 67. Request to address Council regarding the Accelerator program, and the speakers are Lynn Lee, Siobhan James, Jennifer Balanas, Renee Shade, and Marianne Bahrouzi.
Very good. You each have each have 3 minutes, and please come right on up. And the first 3 of you, if you want to bring 2 more chairs up, that's great too. And again, we just need your name for the record. And we find that these microphones work best if you have 6 or 8 inches away, and they slide around. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. So I'll begin. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Lynn Lee, and I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Society 9, which is a modern women's boxing brand producing boxing gear and apparel to empower women in their fight. I started this company 3 years ago because women were severely underserved in the boxing world. There was no quality product designed to fit them. There was no brand in existence focusing exclusively on the unique needs of the 18 million women around the world who do boxing fitness recreationally and competitively. Because of awards I've received, such as the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, I've been fortunate to build my network and receive investments, which has enabled my company to grow to where it is today. However, a company like mine is too risky for banks and not fast growing enough for traditional venture capital funds that expect a return of 10x or more in a very short amount of time. I benefited professionally from a great relationship with the Portland Seed Fund, having been their first fund associate. This experience enabled me to learn behind the scenes what it takes to build and fund a high-growth business from the many talented portfolio founders, while understanding the relationship management required between founders and investors. I want to emphasize, though, that my experience is unique. This is definitely not every woman entrepreneur's experience. When businesses leave the pre-revenue stage, there is a massive gap of resources. With programs like TIE and Portland Incubator Experiment that help businesses launch past the pre-revenue stage, and institutional funds like Oregon Angel Fund that operate with a more traditional venture capital model, there is a huge opportunity in the middle where a majority of high potential businesses lie. And it just so happens that most of these companies are founded by women and people of color. Programs like Accelerate offer continued education and support to fill this gap. And while I have been fortunate to build my network because of my professional experience and Society 9's unique success, I know that Accelerate will continue to provide a bridge for more women to grow their businesses and get to the next level. We are out here doing the work, striving to create meaningful impact, social change, jobs, and opportunities for others. And I encourage you to support women and minority entrepreneurs in order to represent all of the city and lift them up as a testament for what we hope Portland can be in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for allowing me to be here today. Hi, my name is Siobhan James, and I'm a business development consultant focusing on diverse founders in social innovation, consumer products, and consumer services. I currently work with the Portland Incubator Experiment, a business incubator that provides co-working space and mentorship to early stage startups. And I also work with Thai Oregon on their Entrepreneur Bootcamp, a bootcamp that takes entrepreneurs through the lean canvas business model to help streamline and crystallize their ideas and businesses in 5 weeks. We hear a lot about who gets funded and has access to capital and resources nationally, but these are my actual personal statistics that I've encountered while being here in Portland. I've done recruitment and selection for the last 3 cohorts that have been a part of the Entrepreneur Bootcamp, and about 60% of those participants has been a woman of color. After completion, I don't know where to send all this talent. And in the past 6 months, I have encountered over 150 founders looking for support, not only financial, but for an incubator or a program or a development class, and more than half of those people that have approached me have been women. There is one woman in particular that I have seen at least a dozen times since the completion of the boot camp at different events around the city focusing on entrepreneurs and founders. She will be participating in Pitch Latino, and she's looking for more and intensive programs to help continue her business growth. And I would hate to see us not fan her flames and have them burn out, or even worse, if she takes her talents to another city because of lack of opportunities here. I think we read in TechCrunch and the Portland Business Journal and other publications about the lack of resources available to underrepresented people. And there is a real, tangible need here in Portland, and we'd like to be a part of that solution. We know that there are women founders out there when we're being intentional about who we support. And I know what it feels like to walk into a room and be the only one. I experience it several times a day. And I can tell you that is not where I thrive, and that is not a space that actually promotes growth. I wouldn't be able to do this work if it wasn't for these women who allow me to be noticed. Now we need to create a space where they feel supported and they get mentorship from each other and they feel noticed too. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for the work you do. Good morning.
Good morning. Buenos dias. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Jennifer Bolanos, and I'm the founder and owner of Villa Raiz, a shop that celebrates the new era of Mexican craft. Villa Raiz is an homage to my heritage. The name means through roots and pays tribute to the idea of going back to your roots as a source of inspiration. It has become a way to connect with my origins and share the love for my culture with the world. My family is from Michoacan, Mexico, a state rich in history, culture, and folklore. My family's background has played an important role in starting Villa Raiz. As a little girl, my parents would take me to visit the artisan towns and see the artisans creating their beautiful crafts. And these memories are some of the fondest memories that I have. My parents were entrepreneurs themselves, and they also served as inspiration. My dad was a flooring contractor, and Mama owned a home cleaning business. They taught me the power of hard work and determination. Portland is home to an incredible community of makers, doers, and creators. So when I moved here 4 years ago, I couldn't help but be inspired by the city's entrepreneurial spirit. Being here has given me the opportunity to connect with amazing people and create an invaluable network. The community support of entrepreneurs gave me the motivation to start my own business. I have looked at other incubator-style programs in Portland, and there's nothing like the Accelerate Fund. It's inclusive to a variety of business models and concepts with the sole requirement of seeking growth. With an all-female community, network, and mentorship, the Accelerate creates a safe and supportive space in which we can be understood, validated, celebrated, and successful. The Accelerate Fund recognizes the importance of women-owned businesses to their local communities. Their program is providing a critical platform to guide female entrepreneurs in creating sustainable growth strategies for their business and provide funding to businesses that span different industries and revenues. To achieve the goals that I have planned for Via Raiz, I'll need funding, but investors aren't interested in companies like mine, which are slow growing without an immediate enormous return. Through the Accelerate Fund, businesses like mine will have the ability to access the capital needed to thrive. My vision is to reframe what it means to be made in Mexico. Now more than ever, it's important to create a platform through which a cultural exchange between Mexico and the world can take place. More than a shop, I see Via Raiz as a cultural hub, helping build community by offering a space for people to come together to explore Mexico's burgeoning creative scene. Through the beauty of finely crafted wares, I want people to experience a different aspect of Mexican culture. Mexico has a powerful story to share on the world stage, and with the support of the Accelerate Fund and Portland community, I can take part in telling it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate all three of you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you again so much for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. My name is Renee Shade, and I'm the Deputy Director of Accelerate. Last year, the Council supported us through Prosper Portland's budget process. Your support and the additional funding we received from Prosper Portland allowed us to successfully launch our Accelerator program and support the women entrepreneurs you see here today. Accelerate is a Portland-based nonprofit organization that provides support to women entrepreneurs to help them grow successful, scalable companies. Lynn, Jennifer, and Miriam don't have MBAs, but it's important that they have the business skills and knowledge to grow successful businesses. Accelerate provides this. We have a year-long accelerator for women entrepreneurs. Our programs provide practical and actionable education for women entrepreneurs. They have companies that currently have products in the market, or what's called post-revenue, and they've got customers in the US and abroad. Our participants come together twice a month for education, mentorship, and peer support. Over the course of the program, they receive over 100 hours of intensive support. Our goal with each cohort is to double these companies' revenues, help them retain their existing employees, and create at least 50 new jobs. As Siobhan mentioned, once a startup has completed a program such as PI, there's little structured support for them. Accelerate provides this structured support for women entrepreneurs. We create a safe space where entrepreneurs can be vulnerable and learn directly from the experience of other women. Nationally, the stories and statistics of women entrepreneurs, particularly women of color, are abysmal, and we've all heard them particularly recently. In Oregon, the 2016 Capital Scan notes that a lack of business knowledge, financial knowledge, and capital is currently limiting new company formation and growth here in our state. Women have an amazing economic potential. We start businesses at 5 times the national average. We lead some of the most reliably profitable businesses that are more likely to succeed, we're more capital efficient, and have higher annual revenues. A 2016 McKinsey study notes that a $475 billion investment in gender parity alone can lead to an additional $4.3 trillion in GDP by 2025. In cities such as Portland, this translates into a GDP increase that could be as much as 13%. With women-owned businesses, these economic gains are also not limited to those at the very top. One of our other participants, Ground Up, a nut butter company, works with local nonprofits to provide jobs to women transitioning out of homelessness. Accelerate's goal is to serve women entrepreneurs across the country. And here in Portland, we have the opportunity to build a national model to unlock the economic potential of women entrepreneurs across the US. So thank you again for your support last year. I hope you continue to see the value in supporting underrepresented entrepreneurs, such as Lynn, Jennifer, Miriam, and many, many more. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Great. Hi, my name is Miriam Baruzzi. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I am the founder of Spella Cosmetics. We launched in October 2016, and since then have expanded to over 40 storefronts nationwide, including retailers such as J. Crew and Anthropologie. I am a member of Woman-Led and a member of the first cohort of Accelerate. When I was 3, my parents fled Iran as political refugees. With 3 kids and a few $1,000s, they started over in Vancouver, Canada. When I was 12, they opened their first grocery store and have since then expanded to 7 retail locations and a wholesale distribution company employing hundreds of individuals. They've had a lot of hard work and luck to enable their success, but I've learned through them that in building a business, the resources of time and money are always very limited. I attended law school here in Portland at Lewis & Clark, and looking for a change in my career, my dad reminded me of a childhood dream to start a cosmetics company. In building this business, I very quickly realized that there are really significant gaps in my knowledge, and Accelerate has been instrumental in filling those gaps and giving me the hard skills that I need to succeed. From the standpoint of mentorship and funding, it is so important that the leaders of this program are women. In my experience, it is very difficult to find male mentors without that relationship becoming misconstrued or sexualized. With regards to funding, I've been lucky enough to not need to seek outside funding yet, but I've heard many firsthand accounts of the difficulty of reaching funding as a female founder. Reasons range from investors not understanding a product or service targeted towards female consumers to investment meetings that end in being asked on a date. This atmosphere is not a great situation for women founders. And there is an undercurrent of sexism, in my opinion, in so much of the business world. And Accelerate defies that norm, and they provide a safe space to access the network that I need to be successful. Through this network, we pool resources, we motivate each other, and we have access to the high-level women mentors and investors that are so hard to find. As a cohort, we are all very focused on building successful businesses, which means hiring employees, giving back to our communities, and reinvesting in Portland's future. But as women, and especially as women of color, we have a lot of barriers to that success, and Accelerate builds that pathway and breaks down those barriers. Thank you for your support.
Thanks for all of you being here, and we're proud to support Accelerate through Prosper Portland, and it's great to have this feedback to know that that investment is greatly appreciated. So it's wonderful to have you take the time to come in and share your stories with us and your successes. And we wish you many, many more in the years ahead. Commissioner Fritz?
Thank you to each one of you for coming in and speaking your truth, and thank you in particular for spelling out why it is so difficult for women in business and the culture that we live in. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have any items been pulled from the consent agenda?
We've had two, item 273 and item 275.
273 and 275. Please call the roll on the remainder.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish. Aye. Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The consent agenda is adopted. Item 268, please.
268. Authorized grant agreement with Hack Oregon for $31,600 to build an open data platform, data analytics tools, and web applications from smart cities sources.
Colleagues, the foundation of our Smart Cities and Open Data program is a more intentional, is to focus on more intentional management for city data and increase capability to turn data into useful information. We can derive insight from data we have now and data that we'll be collecting in the future to help us make and evaluate decisions, to design and evaluate policies and programs, to enhance community engagement, and to partner with the private sector to meet city goals around livability, affordability, safety, sustainability, resiliency, and equity. BPS has been coordinating our citywide smart cities and open data efforts and has partnered with PBOT, BTS, PSU, TriMet, Metro, and Hack Oregon to develop and pilot a centralized data platform to foster insight and enable data-driven decision-making. Staff and partners that are in this project are here today to give us a brief overview of the Portland Urban Data Lake, otherwise known as PUDL concept, and to request our approval of a grant to Hack Oregon to support the development of an open and community-owned version of the PUDL platform. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor Wheeler. Thanks, City Council, for having us here. We're really excited to be here to talk about this opportunity with Hack Oregon and to give you a very brief overview of the Portland Urban Data Lake project. So back when we were here in May of 2017 for the Open Data Ordinance, City Council directed us to look at ways to foster a culture of using data to inform and evaluate city decisions and to explore technical tools and methodologies for doing so. So the Portland Urban Data Lake project is really a response to those directives coming out of the Open Data Ordinance. At a very high level, and if there's anything I'd like you to remember from this presentation, it's probably this. Portland Urban Data Lake is a platform to enable data-driven decision-making. Data lakes are kind of a thing. I think the term was coined by Amazon for these platforms that allow you to store, permission, secure, govern, analyze, and make data available. We called ours the Portland Urban Data Lake to get to the acronym PUDL, which we're way more proud of than we probably should be. But it's really this foundation for how we become a more data-driven organization. This is what it looks like if you're looking at the presentation, kind of a high-level representation. We've got a bunch of data that we need to manage. It goes into this cloud-based platform. This is just a sample of data that we need to manage. Obviously, there are thousands and thousands of data sets that are spread throughout the city and the region, and data that we want to collect in the future that we need to figure out how to better manage and how to turn into useful information. So you feed this data into this cloud-based system, and then it makes available out the other side to our GIS systems, to our business intelligence systems like Tableau, and our data analysts in the city, to our web developers and programmers so they can build custom applications, mobile and web applications and dashboards, and to the public via our open data portals. And really there's a whole lot, I'm not going to get into the technical weeds, but there's a whole lot going on inside that cloud-based system beyond just storing the data. It allows us to manage it, it allows us to clean it, it allows us to secure it and govern it. It allows us to build models actually inside the platform that integrate different data sources and turn them into new knowledge. And then it provides the sort of handles that we need for our data analysts in the city and for the public to grab that information and actually turn it into insight. So why do we need this? Really being a smart city is mostly about data. We think of becoming smart as, using information to build new knowledge. And that's really what being a smart city is about, is how we take the data that we have now and how we take the data that we know we're going to have in the future and really start using it more effectively so we can better provide services to the public and so we can, better make and evaluate our decisions. I think it's pretty widely recognized that we are not really effectively managing and are using the data that we have now, much less the data that we're looking at collecting in the future.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we have a lot of data. It tends to be fairly siloed. It tends to be not accessible across, say, bureau boundaries and program boundaries. We tend to collect and design our data for sort of single-purpose uses rather than thinking it as a resource that can be shared across the city and with the public. And we tend to sort of, our data is siloed and it's also sort of siloed in the way that we store it. So, we don't create systems where it's easy to integrate data from multiple sources. And that's really what we need to effectively analyze and turn our data into useful information. We do that with spatial data, and really the city and the region, in partnership with Metro, has been a national leader in how we manage our GIS data. And really we want to build on that system and expand it so that it can accommodate other types of data beyond just things that we can put on a map. Small data is hard, so the data that we have now is quote unquote small data, and we're having trouble managing it. As we move forward, we know we're going to roll out things like sensors that collect data 24/7, 365 days a year, some of which will provide data 10, 20, 30 times a minute. And how are we going to manage all that data as a resource? How are we going to store it? How are we going to turn it into actual information that folks like you, staff in the city, and the public can actually use to make decisions? PUDL is really a foundation for doing that.
Why do you say it's inevitable that we are going to have more sensors?
Well, I think that we recognize that there's a whole bunch that we don't know, that if we knew, we would be able to more effectively make decisions about services we provide and investments that we make. The example that I'll use later that I can use now is that we don't know how pedestrians are using our infrastructure. We have pretty labor-intensive manual ways of going out with clickers to count pedestrians on sidewalks in the city. One of the things we know we want to do going forward is figure out a way that we can have a much more real-time information about how pedestrians are moving through our system, similar to the way that we have information around how vehicles are moving through our system.
I just suggest that that's a policy call, because I think there are significant privacy and monitoring surveillance implications to sensors that surveil everybody who's on every sidewalk.
I absolutely agree, and I think how we roll these things out and how we manage those issues around privacy and confidentiality of our community are core components of this discussion. We definitely don't want the technology to lead, we want the community to lead, and I think those privacy issues are definitely part of that conversation.
And again, I would say whether we roll them out rather than how.
Yeah. You know, extracting value from our data is this untapped opportunity. This is a slide from Harvard from a couple of years ago, and it's not really specific to the public sector. This is actually a study of the private sector. So our percentages are probably a little bit different and probably not as good. But they found that only 50% of data is actively used in decision-making. 70%, and sort of to your point, Commissioner Fritz, 70% of employees have access to data that they should not. So really one of the things we're trying to build in the PUDL is this concept of much more granular levels of permissioning around data so that we make sure that any information that's sensitive, any information that's confidential, only the people that need to see that data see it, and to the degree that's possible, we don't want to collect that information at all. And so really thinking that through as part of the technical platform is one of the things that we're talking about. And then this is near and dear to Michael Kerr's heart. 80% of the time that analysts spend analyzing data is really finding the data and cleaning it up so that they can actually use it. And so that's a huge time suck that we want to really build a platform that reduces that percentage significantly. Some core principles, and I'll just run through these real quick. Data does not equal insight. We've seen a lot of cities sort of rush into technical solutions like rolling out sensors, collecting a bunch of data, and then realizing they don't know what to do with it and they don't know how to use it. And so data does not magically become information just because you collect it. We need systems in place to make that data useful. Data is more valuable in combination with other data. We need systems that allow us to integrate data to tell a fuller story. We're really looking, using the smartphone versus camera analogy to build something that's not single purpose. That's the way we tend to manage data now. We sort of store it over here, we analyze it over here. We want to build a platform that does all of those things, so akin to the smartphone. We want it to be nimble, open, and vendor agnostic. We don't want to lock ourselves into a particular solution. We know these are all new technologies. We want to be able to change our minds down the road in terms of where we store this data. We want to start small and test, evaluate, improve, and repeat. So really recognizing that there's no one right answer right now, and that the way to do this, the way to innovate is really to start small with a problem we can wrap our heads around and build from there. We want to learn from our past successes around how we manage GIS data, both as a city and a region. And we recognize we are not alone. So we're partnered with TriMet, PG Metro, because we're all struggling with the same problem in the region. We're also working with the city of Austin, the city of Denver, and the city of Boston to try to look at if we can build sort of a shared collaborative solution. Other cities City of Columbus just rolled out a $10 million RFP to essentially do what we're proposing to do here for a couple $100,000 in a pilot. We recognize that we want to start small, and that no amount of money is going to bring somebody in to help solve this problem for us. We really need to solve this problem from within and then leverage the technical tools we need to do so. All of this is hard. This is just from 2014. This is a graphic of all the different data platforms that are out there in 2014. So it's 2018 now, so this is even messier than it was then. And we spent the past really 3 to 6 months evaluating all the different options and figuring out what technology is the best fit for Portland. And so we're now at the point where we're ready to move on a couple of pilots. And those pilots, again, at just a high level, we're looking at a pilot with Microsoft and a company called Cloudera, which is an aggregator of open source tools that you can use for these types of data platforms, and a company they work with called Clairvoyant. That's more of a platform as a service model where we'll be paying them to basically create and manage this platform for us. We're talking to Amazon AWS about more of a do-it-yourself model where we would build this internally and pick and choose the tools we want to use ourselves. And then what we're really here today to talk about is a pilot with Hack Oregon on sort of a community-built version of this, and really recognizing that there's an opportunity here to continue to support Hack Oregon, which is nationally recognized as a leader in using data to foster civic engagement, and really want to continue that relationship with Hack Oregon going forward. And Kat's here from Hack Oregon to talk a little bit more about that. We're also focusing in on a few use cases around safety, pedestrian safety. So how can we use the data we have now, and how can we look to future data sources to get a better handle on proactively identifying places where there's a high risk of pedestrian injuries before they actually occur, and how can we better assess the investments we're making around pedestrian safety so that we know that they're working, and data has a role in both of those conversations. We're looking at a partnership with TriMet around improving transit arrival times based on real-time traffic and congestion information. We're calling this the will I be late to work and be fired use case. We're looking at a partnership with PSU around the predictive pedestrian models to really get at a better understanding of how our curb is being utilized. So these are the initial use cases that we're rolling out with. And then we've got a pretty broad collaborative team internally. It's a partnership between BPS, PBOT, and BTS. But we're also working with Portland State, TriMet Metro, Hack Oregon, and Portland General Electric. The initial funding for all of this is coming from PBOT, and I just want to thank them for recognizing that they're going to need this data foundation to do the kind of work that they want to do going forward, and that before we put out any systems or increase our capacity to collect data, we need a place for it to actually go and a place for us to actually manage it. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Michael Kerr from PBOT for a little bit more on the data analyst perspective and also perspective from PBOT itself.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Kerr, and I manage PBOT's Office of Strategy, Innovation, and Performance. I'm here today to provide a Bureau's perspective on the PUDL effort, as well as why we, PBOT, are so invested in making this a success. So the origins of our interest really stem from, as Kevin really has touched on already, but in a more applied sense, with the scope of our mission and just the breadth of our programs, naturally, organically, our data has just developed in ways and been brought in ways that we have siloed systems, siloed storage capacity, siloed data across our Bureau. Every program office maintains immense amounts of data, and they do it in their own way. They have to answer questions specific to their programs, and this is just how things have gone. It's a natural occurrence. You see this in any organization, but in PBOT, given our breadth and scope, it tends to be a fairly immense how spread our data is. Add to that the fact that when you try and take data from different programs and bring it together to combine it to actually derive insights from the data, it tends to be highly unstructured, formatted in different ways. Certain terms are called, a road is called different things in different data sets, for example, because each program may look at a road a little bit differently. So when you try and bring these things together, it's incredibly manual. It takes time, effort, labor, bringing subject matter experts to the table to really get them to explain to you what the data means and to make sure we're all in alignment and consensus before we can proceed. So with that, we look at PUDL as a great place to go because with a central platform for us to place our data, it introduces maturity. It introduces new behaviors that we'll need to pull out of our staff to ensure that going forward, we don't continue to bring in data in a siloed fashion. That being the case, we are also, given the PUDL effort, we've already initiated internal efforts. We're inventorying our data across our bureau to better understand what we have today, where it resides, who maintains it. It's just a starting point. When you do any type of open data effort, this is a requirement, right? And we're already taking these steps. Simultaneously, we're looking at the data quality across our bureau. So if we do share data with PUDL or with external stakeholders, that we can accurately communicate what this data is, what it means, how sensitive is this information, when was it last collected, and then just a quality score, so to speak, so you know what you can do with it. And then finally, we're looking to warehouse data. It's a strategy of bringing data into a central place so that we can better transfer data back and forth with an open data platform like PUDL. That's our existing data. As Kevin's touched on, there are numerous emerging data sources across the smart cities space that can help us as a bureau better answer questions that up to this point in time has been incredibly difficult to answer, where we've utilized fixed counts and fixed intervals going out to street corners, as Kevin mentioned, to count pedestrians, count bikes. We have smart cities providers coming to us that are really providing incredibly innovative ways to present this information back to us, information that is real time, information that is comprehensive, as opposed to fixed points. It is across the city, all roads, we can see from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. exactly how everyone was traveling, what mode they took, what roads they took, if there was construction on a road, how did they divert and where did they end up. It's incredibly promising material. And we are very encouraged by what's out there, but we know, given our current data infrastructure, if we start bringing this data in, it's almost like you open the floodgates, you start getting this data. I'll take, as an example, the Waze CCP, the data we're getting through that community partnership. You turn that data on, it's thousands of records every minute coming in just on an ongoing basis. It can overwhelm your systems. Number one, storage capacity is reached pretty quickly. And then two, it's coming in an unstructured format, so you're getting reams of information that you then as an analyst have to take and somehow translate to derive insights out of it. When we look at PUDL, we see a platform that's going to be able to just take this data in, translate it via machine learning, automation, however we ultimately design this system, and then provide back to us the insights that we've provided to them, saying we need data for these time intervals across these various modes, and PUDL will be able to provide that directly back to us, so that then we as a bureau can truly take this data, do real rigorous analytics, and provide each of our programs with various insights as to how what we're doing as a bureau is impacting our city, and how investments are impacting our city, and how we should be prioritizing going forward. And then I'll finally touch on just the BI tools we have today. We've talked about GIS. GIS is incredibly promising from a spatial perspective. We use it for almost everything we do across our bureau in order to map where we are, what we're doing, where our investments are going, where our safety improvement projects are going, where Vision Zero is focused. But GIS has its limitations when it comes to real-time data. And our GIS techs will tell you, while we love the tool and we want to continue to use it for its current set of use cases, when it comes to real-time data, we get a little frightened about this because GIS isn't necessarily capable of taking all these reams of information from the signals, from the sensors, from these GPS data sets, and automatically translating it over into actual derived insights. Then we have Tableau, super sophisticated BI tool that can actually work with immense amounts of information. However, the way we as a city have deployed Tableau, it's localized, every bureau has various instances of it, it's on desktops. You can't necessarily tap into enterprise data sources like, say, SAP or our HR data sources to pull data out. You have to get flat files, and it's a very manual process. Subsequently, you also run into data security issues without an enterprise backbone because we're sharing dashboards, et cetera, with sensitive information. We have to withhold this information and manipulate ways to get it out only to those who need it. It's not the right way to go, which is where PUDL then provides us with an enterprise backbone that we can work with. So I'll leave it at that for now. We are absolutely on board with the PUDL project. We will continue to support this given the use cases we're focusing on, and we very much want to see this project succeed.
Thank you.
And Kristen Tufte is here from Portland State to talk about PSE's role and her role in the project.
Right. Good morning. My name is Kristen Tufte. I'm computer science faculty and Smart Cities Liaison at Portland State University. And thank you for having me here this morning. So, you know, honestly, when I talk about our work in PUDL, I usually talk about people and how that I really honestly hope that our work will make a pedestrian safer or give some reassurance to a lady who's riding the bus, give her some more accurate information about when she gets to her destination so she knows she's going to get to work on time. But I'm going to try and take a little bit of a different tack today, and I'm going to put my academic hat on, and I'll tell you that I've been working in big data since the early or mid-1990s. Maybe don't want to admit that, but that's about 25 years. And this includes development of several really cutting-edge research data management projects, including one called Paradise that we actually sold to NCR Corporation. So data is my space. That data platforms diagram that Kevin mentioned that looks messy, I think, and complicated, that's my space. I love it. It's fascinating. It's interesting to me. Bringing us a bit back to where we are here today. So let's imagine for a moment that one of our project goals, and maybe it is to bring you guys a graphic, bring you all a graphic about an issue, pedestrian safety. And the purpose of that graphic is to maybe help you understand that issue better, to enable a little bit of a discussion and a decision. And the question is, how's PUDL going to help us get to that graphic? And so to my mind, the very first step in that is understanding that issue, whatever we're talking about pedestrian safety from your perspective. How does that issue appear from your perspective? What are the potential levers you may have to influence that issue? So, and that's a key point that I have, which is that all the work on data, the work on PUDL, this work really absolutely must be driven by outcomes, specific outcomes such as providing you all with a really interesting graphic on pedestrian safety. So then Kevin presented this data pipeline. The first piece in that pipeline is ingest. So in my words, that's just getting data and getting it into the system. And as Mike described, that in itself can be a really difficult part. The next piece is data engineering. This is sort of my area. And I describe data engineering as getting the data to play nicely together. Yes, I know I personalize data, right? Makes me a geek. So it's trying to get all this data to play nicely together. And if you think about pedestrian safety, what data do we want to learn about intersection safety? We want to know how many cars are there? How fast are they going? Is it cars and trucks or mostly cars? How many pedestrians are there? Is there a bus stop nearby? There's a whole variety of data that might influence our pedestrian safety graphic, and we got to get all that data to play nicely together. Different formats, different levels of qualities, et cetera. It is, to my eyes, there are tools and techniques out there that can help us solve it, but it's not a fully solved problem. We have some research ongoing at Portland State that we call agile data integration that is applicable to this problem. So it's a problem even in the research space. So the data pipeline, ingest, engineering, stewardship, and then those three things provide the foundation for the data analytics and the data science that would create this graphics for you. So our goal, yeah.
We have a blank screen, and if the public isn't okay.
There we go.
Now it's on. So there you go. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. Right, so those are the three steps. So that's what we'll focus on in PUDL: ingest, engineering, stewardship, followed by analytics and data science with the goal of providing actionable outcomes. PSU is a partner in this effort. We are excited to be a partner in this effort. We very much value the partnership with the city and with the regional agencies. We strive to provide the technical backbone for you all to be a smart city that is part of our shared goals and our partnership agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, and we hope you're better at data than plumbing.
When I was in high school, and I took a test to tell me what career I should have, it told me I should be a plumber.
My mom had wished that I was either a plumber or electrician, and there's days when I do too.
Right.
Commissioner Fritz, did you have a comment?
I do. I have several questions. I noticed in the principles that there was nothing on equity, and I'm wondering how this benefits our underserved communities, and particularly this really introduces a new category of underrepresented people who are those of us who don't understand technology nor would really be able to delve into a lot of data. So I'm interested, maybe not extensively now, but as this project moves forward, to understand how those people are going to be better served.
Maybe I'll take a first crack at that.
Okay.
Fill in. I think that's a really good question, and one of the things that we recognize is that the way that we make data available to the public now is not equitable in and of itself. So we have open data portals, and that's great. People can go and download data. But as we like to say, that only serves sort of the 1% of people that can actually take that data and do something with it, that have those skills. So one of the reasons that we are so excited about the PUDL project is because by building this sort of foundational platform for making data more accessible, we can make it accessible in a way that provides actual information rather than just sort of raw data. And so we've heard a lot from the community, like, it's great that you're making your data available to us, but I can't do anything with it. And really, we want to have a community conversation around, as we make our data available, how can we do it in a way that you can actually, make decisions based on it?
Well, the challenge, though, is that it usually stimulates more conversation. We've found with our geographic mapping, it looks like we invest a lot of money in East Portland in the Water Bureau, for example. That's because the reservoirs are there. So it's not that it's really benefiting. We had a robust conversation earlier this week about transportation and the state of roads in East Portland, that the East Portland representative was astonished to find out that, according to Tableau, the streets are in pretty good shape there. So it's I'm concerned about that this sometimes doesn't create more understanding. It creates less understanding and more questions then coming into staff who may or may not have ever seen that particular graphic. So that's something I'm concerned about moving forward. You mentioned about doing the computer programs automatically analyzing all this data. I know that we will have, there's a lot of national concern about voting machines and various other things. How will it build in the quality control so that we know that the machine has done it correctly? Thirdly, is this all predicated on each of us being tracked through carrying our cell phones?
No.
No. So that's, when you're talking about knowing where the traffic is and everything, it's kind of a mystery to me how Google Maps knows where all the congestion is and takes me around the right way. But this is it on a much more personal level that people might not necessarily be asking Google Maps to tell them how to do it. So that's of concern. And then my last thing to be explored is, what are the state laws about this? We know that Oregonians are very much into privacy. We have to battle to get photo radar in specific areas, and we have to put big signs up saying that watch out, you could be on candid camera. How do you envision any state laws needing to change in order to be able to do something like this?
I mean, I think those are all excellent points, and part of what we're going to be doing in this pilot is doing some learning around how we approach all those issues, and I hope that we can continue to engage your office in those conversations.
Thank you.
I want to bring a Kat up from Hack Oregon too to say a few words specifically about the grant with Hack Oregon. Yeah, Kat, you want to come up?
Well, I think we still have a couple questions with this panel.
Okay.
Can we do that first?
Sure.
And then?
Sure.
So I had two questions. So one of the challenges we have in the bureaus, all the bureaus, is better understanding how the people we serve view us, and what kind of information do they want? And I think a classic example of that is when we have discussions at budget time about some of the benchmarks that have been developed. I've been a critic of some of the benchmarks because they seem to me not to be correlated to things that we're hearing that our customers care about. Right. So we're trying to get benchmarks that are actually directly relevant to people's experience. So my two questions to PBOT, is it Mike?
Yep.
Is number one, what's the process you go through to figure out what the people you serve are interested in? And how do you determine what kinds of questions people have and how the data will serve that? And number two, does the proliferation of data allow you to make real-time changes in the grid daily? And I'll just give you one example. There's a huge choke point in our city now around Grand, MLK, Cooch, and Burnside Bridge. And there's a lot of factors, including construction, a lane taken out of Burnside, and the like. But another piece of it is that, as I learned to my detriment the other day, the reason traffic is backed up on Grand so far is that the light at MLK along Cooch lasts about 8 seconds. And so there isn't enough capacity to get so cars get blocked at the intersection, they can't get through and so it backs up. Does the proliferation of good data allow PBOT to make real-time changes in those kinds of patterns?
So I'll get obviously to that question in a moment, but to go back to your first question about how we solicit input from external stakeholders, given that PBOT is so present, and as we like to describe it, every project we work on from a capital perspective is above ground. We're shutting down lanes, we're diverting traffic, we're having to do something that inevitably impacts someone or a mass of someone's. So through the capital improvement programs, I mean, that's one place where we get continuous feedback. You look at the immense outreach we do around our broader, bigger projects like NATO, for example. That's one major input. Our planners are out there conducting stakeholder engagement meetings on an ongoing basis. I mean, this is real time, bringing people to the table, constant outreach, and it is throughout every year. And then you bring it back to our BBAC and how we get feedback through that process as well. We also are working on right now, our communications director is working on a community outreach survey, just another way of getting inputs. But again, we can never get enough. That is a constant discussion. But we do, as a bureau, that is constantly a focus of what we're doing. But we know we could always get more, and there are always opinions that we miss. And it's just something we have to take account of and constantly get better at. To your question about real-time adjustments, the answer in short is we believe that will be the case. Our signals and streetlights team today, I mean, they already have means to see what's going on via video cameras and to make adjustments, not necessarily real time, but we react to what's going on. Sometimes you can't necessarily foresee what's happening before it happens, and it's going to take a day or two to make an adjustment. That being, regardless, the hope would be with this data and in the future that back to this whole machine algorithm-based automated services, that those types of real-time adjustments to the way a signal is timed, et cetera, will be possible across the transportation system without someone having to go in and intervene. But this is hypothetical. We don't know where we're going to go. Just the data shows that, yes, it's promising, and it may enable us to make these types of changes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I want to keep us moving. We're way over time here, and we still want to hear from Kat, and we still have to take public testimony. So if we could keep this focused on the grant agreement with HAC Oregon, that would be helpful. There's lots of time to talk about the transportation issues and the open data issues generally.
Mayor,
Commissioner
I don't think we saw several slides in your presentation, so if you could email them to us. I feel like you were referring to slides that we couldn't see.
Yeah, I will make sure that you have those.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kat, do you want to come
Kat, would you come up?
Hi, thank you. I'll do my best to keep this brief. There is a lot to digest, and I think just to highlight our program and really what HAC Oregon does, and to continue on with the partnership and investment that the city has made in us with the grant last year. We work with volunteers and build open data projects that are systems to help enable more of this data to be used. In terms of analytics, it creates consolidation of existing information that we have. I would like to mention as well that we're working with data overall that is not sensitive, personally identifiable, or anything that gets into security concerns. We are really rich with opportunity and things that we can learn, especially when it comes to equity, around the things that the public wants to hear about that don't necessarily fit into some of the programs and existing workflow of people that work in these different areas. That even PBOT, if we want to discuss something about transportation and we're looking at mobility in our city and ridership, TriMet released a report in fall looking at a slow decline in ridership over the last 10 years. This is coming from an enormous data set of ridership data. And they were able to, they put a lot of man hours into producing this report, and they couldn't quite say, why is ridership declining? There was an article that was published with, this was national, looking at, potentially it's economic displacement, but we would have to do a lot more work in order to understand this better. And of course, that brings in questions about our neighborhoods, affordable housing, tie that all back into transportation, and then, neighborhood development and change over time. All of this data, you're talking about 20 different types of sources involving a number of different bureaus, county, even state. What does mobility mean in terms of disaster planning, right? That you can easily just compound the complexity of these questions. And if you don't have systems that are in place to be able to easily access and streamline some of your sources and make this machine readable so that when you have big data, you're not just doing calculations with small teams of analysts, you actually have some machinery that can help make this very quick and accelerate the pace of innovation of what enables the decision making. We have been able to access the ridership data from TriMet and really help them because we have a team of 40 engineers that are working as volunteers for 6 months to deliver a demo of this graphic that you'll see. It'll actually look like an entire system that will let us know something new about ridership decline. And guess what? In order to learn something about ridership decline, we have to understand economic displacement, and we have to understand equity and mobility in Portland, which involves a lot of factors. And so in that way, we are required to be nimble and move in between bureaus in a way that can be really difficult for government to do. There's barriers to innovation when it comes to procurement and a lot of other things that Portland is not alone dealing with. And the reason that Hack Oregon's getting national attention at this moment is because we've been able to inspire teams of volunteers to come out from the private sector, work with domain experts, and oftentimes volunteer right alongside city employees after hours to see what we can do with this available information to offload some of that risk in R&D. These would be very expensive projects if we were paying for the time involved with the people doing them, but because it's so important and because it doesn't seem like there's a process for us to move forward on this, it creates this call to action that's very powerful for the community. Hack Oregon has been a nonprofit active in Portland for 5 years. We are continuing to build on the momentum that we got from our partnership with the city last year, and the whole country is paying attention. I think it's good to, if you're not aware, there's the Global Smart Cities Tech Jam Conference is coming to Portland in June. We are set up at the convention center for 2,000 people from the community to come out to watch this demo. Our transportation partnership with PUDL and our grant today is just one of 5 projects that we're going to be demonstrating to the public. It's tradition for us, actually, Commissioner Fish was there last year. The audience does a vote on their favorite projects. But we know that some of our other projects, by the way, are affordable housing. We're working on disaster resilience. That's also we're working with PBEM on that. And we're working on transportation with PUDL and neighborhood development with the county. And we're looking into elections and redistricting. So all of these projects share data sources. And what I'd like to just leave you with today is listening to all of this conversation. I know it may seem a little bit strange where we're talking about the city's long-term vision for what open data means, and there's so many questions that goes into what cloud and security and different pipelines mean. Hack Oregon is listed up there as a micropilot partner right alongside AWS and Microsoft. Why is that the case, and why is this happening with a nonprofit here in Oregon? It's actually very unusual nationwide, and when you think about the citizen engagement open part of it, you may think that it means that it's an amateur hour sort of, creating a presentation, but these are some of the most talented, highly sought after developers, engineers, and data scientists in our city. We have thousands of applications of people who want to join these teams. We took 125 volunteers this year. By the way, 60 of those volunteers went through extensive training with us as part of a workforce development program. And depending on how you look at it, we're one of the largest developer shops in town, and this is all going back into the public domain with these systems that belong to people and can be there to help inspire and inform all of the questions that are going to come at us for many years as we develop our long-ranging vision for open data. And so we want to have an amazing showcase in June when the country is going to be here looking at smart cities. We want to establish that leadership for Portland. I know that we can do it. We're entirely grateful for the support from BPS and PBOT. We also, just as a reminder, we have a formal request in for the budget bump as well. just to help us make sure that we can get over the finish line, especially when it comes to looking at housing and affordability and some of those equity questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Commissioner Fritz.
So thank you for your presentation and for your work. You just mentioned having lots of volunteers involved in this. Some of this data that the city handles is confidential, sensitive information. How are your, I mean, the very name of your organization doesn't, usually being hacked is not something that is a happy day when that happens. So what are the safeguards for community members who might be worried about their data being available to people who are not public employees?
I think that the simple answer to that question is that we're not working with data that wouldn't already be in the public domain, and that this is more of an accessibility question, that we can do a service to bureaus who actually would want to share their data, but can't necessarily, it's staff time to do that. Also cleaning up a lot of data sources, making it possible to make that available to be shared. I think that an example of this is when we were working with TriMet, the Smart Cities community, when this ridership report came out, they said that they would be willing to open up this ridership data, which is not allowing you to follow anyone's trip. It's just basically counts of on-offs and certain things around schedules. But there's a lot of information there, and they were, wanting to share it with other cities so we can do cross-regional analysis. And it was like, well, how do we get you that data? Are we mailing a thumb drive all around? And Hack Oregon was able to take that data, put it into a cloud-based system that now is accessible to other cities, and also TriMet themselves. Usually the city is the #1 user of the data that we serve.
Okay, thank you. So for our city staff, when we get a public records request, we submit it through it gets submitted through the city attorney's office. Are you envisioning any involvement by the city attorney's office?
Yes, and we've had great conversations with city attorney's office around how we can leverage these kinds of platforms to actually reduce the number of public records requests by proactively making the data available before people ask for it. So we are definitely partnered with them in these conversations.
And are they envisioning needing more staff in order to set it up?
The pilots themselves? Mm-hmm. That's a good question. We're basically working with the resources that we have now, and everybody's sort of doing this on top of their day jobs, which is not a long-term plan, but will get us through the short-term pilots. That's one of the reasons we're looking at, for one of the pilots, for the vendor to essentially manage it for us, and there would be a transition plan of how we would build up the resources internal to the city that we could take that over at some point when it goes to production. But that's probably a 1920 conversation.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. I understand you have some invited testimony, is that correct?
We do. Do you still have time for that?
We do, if people could keep their remarks succinct.
That'd be great, because I brought people here.
Yeah, let's
I know they're excited.
Their time, they're busy people, and let's hear from them, absolutely.
So let's start. We have a partner from Intel and Metro here to provide some invited testimony.
Welcome, come on up.
Yeah, come on up.
Thank you for being here.
We'll give Devin a little extra time. She just had foot surgery.
Oh dear,
so.
yeah, I see that.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to introduce myself and my company's dedication to changing the world with technology. My name is Devin Rotier. I'm based out of Chicago, so I came here all the way with my crutches and my boot to speak with you. Very excited.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, of course. And I manage Intel's relationship with public sector end users in the Midwest and the Pacific Northwest. So I think I'll try to keep this brief, but Kevin mentioned a couple of other cities across the country that are also trying to solve the same problem, and I think that this is an opportunity for Portland to really be a thought leader and be on the map. And being that Portland is in Intel's backyard, and several, a large base of our employees are citizens of Portland. Intel's really excited to work on the PUDL project. So. And
we're thrilled to have you. I think this is a great collaboration and a great partnership, and we're very, very appreciative to have you here. Thank you. Sorry about your foot.
No problem.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for taking the time to hear us.
Thank you,
I'm
sir.
Jeff Furkanja. I'm the Metro Research Center Director. So the Research Center at Metro is our Geek Squad. And we've been privileged to share our expertise with the great team that Kevin has put together here with all the people you've already heard from. we are here to strongly endorse these pilot projects and the innovative work that your team is doing. And I want to say that the steps that they are taking are early steps towards a greater vision of having a truly smart city, which, as you've heard in more detail, is really about getting public servants like ourselves the tools and resources to do our information job more efficiently, and then also to bring better decision support information to you folks. And so the ultimate vision then proceeds to getting the real value out to your constituents, the people who reside in the city and of course the region, so they have better information about public goods and services. So this is important work. It is a long game, but it will ultimately get us to a smart city and, in our view, from Metro's perspective, to a smart region. So we do endorse this work and hope that you will support it. And thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you. And I'll say the same thing to you that I said to the representative from Intel. We appreciate the partnership. We think that there's a lot of learning that can go on here simultaneously for all of us.
Likewise, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Devin. And then just a quick word from TriMet and PGE.
Good morning.
Morning. Hi, I'm Tim McHugh from TriMet. I'm the CIO there. I've been involved in a lot of the open data initiatives that you've already heard from Kat and Kevin. I would tell you that our experience with that has been nothing but positive over the years. It's produced results that we didn't initially envision in any way whatsoever, and it's been a great, just positive thing, engaging the public, getting a lot of good information, getting a lot of fantastic customer information out there that we would not have been able to provide otherwise. And when I'd add that a lot of the work that we need to do in order to get this data organized, a lot of the just diagrams that Kristen displayed for you, that kind of activity has to be taking place in every single one of our divisions, companies, bureaus, whatever we are. It's so duplicative. I think that's one thing about this project that is really kind of exciting, is for all of us to focus our resources, getting us all on the same sheet of music. And obviously for TriMet, it's the mobility of the region, and we all need to be working off the same sheet of music when we're looking at decisions on how to get things through the city faster.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity. I'm Josh Keeling. I manage our Customer Energy Solutions group at Portland General Electric. Our team works on projects in new products and development across a wide suite of projects in smart cities, in decarbonization, in resilience, and transportation electrification. And as you can imagine, across those categories, we're pretty big customers of the data that the city provides already, and are pretty invested in finding new opportunities to collaborate and find synergies in both the provision of open data, but also analytics, and making that more operational. Our planning process on these projects is increasingly reliant on strong collaboration with the communities, with the cities, with the municipalities, particularly when we look at areas such as transportation electrification or resilience, where looking at supporting the communities, finding ways to help them manage in potentially catastrophic events. So this is a huge focus, a corporate goal of our own, and as well in supporting the city's goals around smart cities and decarbonization. So we've been really happy with the partnership, both with the city and with HAC Oregon. We strongly endorse this effort.
Excellent, thank you both. Appreciate it very much. So
is
that
it
the
for
end of
us.
invited testimony? Thank you very much.
Yes,
excellent
thanks for your patience.
presentation. Sue, how many people do we have signed up?
No one signed up?
Very good.
I'm going to speak.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Justice Watchdog. There's one thing that I truly enjoy the most is data. And so when we're talking about bringing this data together and make it more user-friendly, say to the public, I'm at 100% agreement. Now, I noticed on this grant, we're at 31,600. I don't see how you can do a lot with that amount of money. So I'd like to request that that amount be brought up to 150,000. And I think that's a reasonable request. And the benefits of this data for the public to be able to review it and make more informed decisions on what happens at the city, the county, the state level, I think is very beneficial. And I think 150,000 is not a far reach. 30,000 is on the low side. Another issue I have is that I feel that, and I hate to say this to Hack Oregon, we're looking at the autonomous vehicle data that we're going to need. We're looking at my good friend Larry Page, the Skyport data that we'll need. And I like this data being worked on right now. And I think we ask the ridership issue on streetcar, TriMet. I mean, let's face it, I don't need data to know why their ridership is down. We've got Uber, Lyft, we go into autonomous vehicles. I've always said we should stop investing in TriMet. We should stop investing in streetcar. I think they're going to be an obsolete dinosaur. And the reality here is this. We need to look at the data to truly analyze that and have a true understanding on the direction the public is going. We saw what happened to the independent taxi cab companies when Uber came into town. As you know, I was asking Uber, please understand you're going to cost a lot of these people their jobs. Now, they're not going to listen very closely to what I have to say. It's just one person from the public. But when we have real data that is provided, that makes a big difference. That makes a big difference to where they can look at it, they can analyze it, and then we can create solutions if there's going to be job losses in the private taxi industry, which we've had tremendous. The city did nothing. I stood up here and said, you need to do something. You need to put caps on how many drivers you allow Uber to have out in the marketplace currently. Did we come up with a solution? I didn't have the data in front of me to be able to do that with you. And what has happened? What has happened?
All right, thank you.
The private industry has plummeted and they've lost all their money. Thank you very much, City Council. We need data, we need information. Give them 150,000. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'm sure they do appreciate that. Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Thank you for your work. Aye.
Fish.
Thanks for an excellent presentation. And I'd like to know more about the June conference. So hopefully we'll get an email on events that you suggest that we consider going to. Look forward to reviewing the spring bump requests. If there's another presentation at OMSI or elsewhere with, like you did last year, I'd also like to know about that. And you know, this whole question of data, better data, and how we use data is at the core of government accountability. And this is a very exciting collaboration. So I'm pleased to vote aye.
Saltzman.
Well, thank you for the very exciting work you're doing. And, you know, I wish I understood it all, but I have to confess, I'm a layperson here. But I do, from a decision maker's perspective, I guess I'm sort of wondering in the back of my mind as I'm listening to your presentations about data-driven decision making is really, is there a limit to that? I mean, there's only so much data that we as decision makers can absorb. And so I guess, you know, there's a role for subjective decision making that I think we all employ up here to a certain degree or another versus sort of the objective decision making, which is kind of the data-driven answer. So, you know, that's running through my mind. And I think it's something that will need to be looked at. I mean, it's like pointing a fire hose at us. There's only so much we can absorb into our brains and use it to make it a good decision. But I'm very confident in the organizations that are in Hack Oregon and all the other organizations, and I appreciate the work that Hack Oregon has already done for the city of Portland. It's been very productive. I think work you did for the Portland Fire and Rescue recently was very helpful. So I'm going to vote aye for this.
Daly.
I'm in the middle of a sneezing fit, so I'm just going to say I would love to meet with someone from Hack Oregon and talk about ways that we might work together, and just vote aye before it starts again.
Wheeler.
So I'm obviously enthusiastically supportive of this, and I thank all of our partners for being here. This is a great opportunity to use the data to further our goals. And interestingly, this kind of open platform will drive our city bureaus to work together, to innovate, and to focus on our overall objectives. So I think it's a huge movement in the right direction. Lightning, I agree with you that the $31,000, and I want to acknowledge that's narrowly for the hack portion of this particular proposal. This is really a pilot. When we roll this out in a more substantial way based on what we're going to learn through this program, the resources that will be required to make this feasible citywide, bureau-wide, are going to be substantially more than what's being proposed here. So I do want to acknowledge that. Great start. I vote aye. Thank you all for being here. The ordinance is adopted. The grant's approved. Next item, 269.
Item 269, initiate foreclosure action on 3 properties for the collection of delinquent city liens.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Sarah Landis, Chief Deputy City Auditor. And with me today are Marco Maciel, the Foreclosure Program Manager, and Dan Simon in the City Attorney's Office. I've got the City Chief Financial Officer / Treasurer, and with us as well, and the Code Enforcement Manager for BDS are also here to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, we're going to kill it today.
Before I go into individual property detail, I'd like to take just a moment to review the city's efforts to address vacant and distressed properties through foreclosure. This is the 4th foreclosure list that we have brought to council since focused efforts began in 2016. As a reminder, properties end up on the in the foreclosure program when they have delinquent liens. For those properties determined to be vacant and distressed properties, these are code enforcement liens, which result in penalties, and nuisance abatement liens, where the city has incurred a cost to clean up the property. Taking someone's property is obviously a serious step. Per city code, foreclosure should only be used as a last resort when all other enforcement options have not improved the condition of the property. This effort is really the result of a partnership between the 4 agencies listed here, with input from others such as the Police Bureau, neighborhood involvement, and council offices, as well as community members. Very briefly, Development Services recommends candidate properties. The Auditor's Office reviews and selects properties to foreclose. The Treasurer conducts the sale, and the City Attorney advises along the way. Since we began bringing properties to council for foreclosure in 2016, the increased pressure being applied to the owners of these distressed properties has had positive results. We've brought 65, BDS has proposed 65 properties for foreclosure. Including this list, 13 will have been brought to council for a vote. Of the 65 initially brought by BDS, we've had half of them pay in full, over half of them have paid in full, 37, and we've collected $1.6 million. This list
could you not forget the last bullet point on that slide, because I think it's the most important one.
Yeah, so as we move forward with foreclosure on properties, and as owners and financial institutions receive notice that we're intending to move forward on foreclosure, there's a great deal of pressure applied, and that's where we see much of the resolution there in payment in full, in turning those properties over back into productive use. Okay. So there are 3 properties on this list with a total of 15 liens and about $200,000 owed on those liens. 2 of these are in the extremely distressed properties enforcement program, and 1 is a distressed property with chronic maintenance violations. They're located in Northeast Portland and 1 in Southeast Portland. The first property is at 113th and Northeast Wygant. There are 4 liens on this property that were placed between 2015 and 2017. The total amount owed is just over $19,000. The property is in default and is slated for foreclosure by a financial institution later in the summer. It is currently vacant. It is an attractant for squatters and garbage accumulation and debris. Development Services has abated exterior yard nuisance issues twice. There have been 10 calls for police service since 2015, May of 2015, and it's currently boarded and secure by police and Development Services, but these board ups are frequently breached. The second property is at 4918 Southeast 128th Street. It has 5 liens, and it has a 10-year history of problems with the city. At this point, the total amount owed is $130,000, $521. There have been multiple violations cited on the property, including fire, life safety, and health sanitation problems. There are reports of squatters using the property from time to time. There's currently an open trench and collapsed cellar on the property, which is creating hazards for the neighbors' property, particularly their driveway. Attempts to rehabilitate the property were made initially, but those have been abandoned, and it's been uninhabitable for over 5 years. It's currently vacant and boarded. And the last property is at 4406 Northeast 13th Avenue. This property has 6 liens that were assessed between November of 2013 and November 2017. There's a total amount owed of $42,857. This property is one of 6 that this owner has that have violations with the city, so we're anxious to get some progress on this particular property to hopefully spur some activity on the other properties as well. It has multiple fire, life safety violations. It's been declared a derelict building with structural failure. It's an attractant for squatters, garbage and dumping. It's been vacant for 18 years, and the city has performed 10 nuisance abatements on the property. The next step for these 3 properties is for council to vote today on whether to foreclose. The auditor's office then transfers responsibility to the treasurer, who will conduct the foreclosure sale. A property owner can pay the amount owed up to the sale date, and after the sale is conducted, the current owner has a 1-year redemption period in which they can reclaim the property by paying the full cost owed. And that's the end of my presentation. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioner Daly?
I just was trying to read that last slide.
Does the full cost owed include the costs that the city has incurred around remediation and other steps?
Yes, it does, and as well as the collection costs and the cost for the conduct of the foreclosure sale and other fees.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious, so if we sell a property at auction, the previous owner still has a 1-year period in which they can...
Yes, that's by state law.
That's by state law?
Yeah.
Okay. That seems kind of unfair to the purchaser, anyway. And then I wanted to ask, so when a bank forecloses, does that take precedence over our foreclosure, and we just get paid by the bank what we're owed? Is that how it works in a bank foreclosure?
It depends on the position of the lien. So we have senior liens and junior liens. I would let Dan Simon from the City Attorney's Office answer any of those questions.
Yes, and the typical attorney answer is that it depends. It could be that we have senior liens on the property from nuisance abatement costs that have priority over any interest held by the bank or any other interested parties. Mm-hmm. It could be that the city has code enforcement liens, which are junior priority, first in time, first in right. And so when a property is sold by a bank at foreclosure, the surplus of those funds go to pay off all the interests that are seniors to ours before the city has a chance to recoup its fees.
Okay. And just one last question. We were just talking about the, many of the owners do step up at the last minute. Is that last minute prior to going to auction, or is it at the end of that 1-year redemption period?
They can step up anytime prior to the foreclosure sale and pay the amount owed. After the foreclosure sale, they'll have to pay the sale cost, so there could be a difference there between those two.
And there is a penalty attached to that too.
Penalty? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Daly.
Well, I would just like to express my appreciation for your work on this issue. I mean, as you mentioned, we take foreclosure very seriously. I'm really one of the last people, I think, who would be enthusiastic about this option, but these houses are what are commonly referred to as zombie houses, and they're creating like extraordinary hardship in our neighborhoods. It's one of the most frustrating things I think we have to deal with at BDS. So I want to also just voice my opinion that we need to be more aggressive and move faster on these properties.
Very good.
Also, my fantasy is that they would be turned into land trust opportunities for low-income home ownership. I don't know if that's an option, but I just want to put it out there in the ether.
Good vision. Any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
Can we?
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Justice Watchdog. Again, one of the points I didn't hear is what other options did you give these people that are about to lose their equity and their time that they put into these properties? And as private property owners, I feel a lot of their rights to own a property and have title in your name. Now, here's my position. If you've given them options as far as saying, we'll just do away with any of these liens to us if you just get in here and fix this house up and make it a little safer. Have you done that? No. Because when you go into these properties, as you can see on some of these homes, when you come in as the code enforcement, 10,000 there. You come in the code enforcement on this other house, 96,000 on a code enforcement coming in there one time. And then you came back again for the nuisance, cost recovery, you know, to pay you for going out there and writing on your clipboard, another 15,000. Then you came back again, another code enforcement of 16,000. Now they're in debt up to 130,000. Guess what? You just took their equity away from them, their rights as a private property owner. Now get this. I can go out and buy a home today, and I can have it sit there empty. You know why? Because it's my right as a property owner. And my name is on the title. Now guess what happens? If someone comes in off the sidewalk and kicks my door in, breaks my windows out, paints all over the front of my house, you look at that owner as they're the problem. No. Let's talk law enforcement. You haven't done your job here, law enforcement. That's a very unsafe neighborhood. Now, let's go back. You have police reports on this. We should be able to take those police reports, go to our insurance company and say, look at the damage that has been done to my property. I'm allowed to have it sit empty. Why aren't the insurance companies paying for the damages? Why aren't they paying it? Why do the owners not appear here? Because they're so afraid of law enforcement. Why don't they show up? Every report you have in here has directed that they have a concern with the way they're being treated. I would like everybody on this list to have somebody look over this list, talk to the owners, and ask them one question. Do you feel you have been treated fair on this whole situation? One question. I'm glad they got another 12 months at the end of this auction to get their home back, but guess what? You put an anchor on them, you're sinking them, they're vulnerable, and are you helping them as a city? You're nothing but a bunch of bankers up here. You're nothing but a bunch of foreclosure vultures, smug little attitudes, and aren't you the one that voted against all that housing now? Pathetic, pathetic. You know what?
Time, thank you.
Thank
Call
you.
the roll.
Vultures.
Fritz.
Well, thank you, Sarah Landis, for working now with 3 mayors to get this program going. And thanks to Mayor Sam Adams and Charlie Hales for really digging deep into the questions such as those we just heard. I know all of us on the council are very reluctant to take people's properties. With private property rights come responsibilities. And it's very clear from the photographs that you showed that the owners are simply not looking after these properties. So thank you, and I vote aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Salzman.
Thank you, Auditor's Office and City Attorney and BDS. And our treasurer, too. Thank you for your work. Aye.
Udaley.
I want to thank Mike Liefeld, who's in the audience today, and the whole enforcement team at BDS. We are, in fact, helping homeowners who are struggling to come into compliance. It is our absolute last resort to go through a foreclosure process. But as as Commissioner Fritz said, with rights come responsibilities, and often these owners are entirely absentee, they may be deceased, they may be a bank. And I would encourage anyone who thinks that this is a rash action by the city to go spend a few weeks living next door to one. Aye.
Wheeler.
So by law, it is extremely hard for government to foreclose. And in fact, we have several hundred so-called zombie houses scattered throughout the city of Portland, and they provide public safety, public health, and environmental hazards, not only to the immediate properties, but also to the adjacent properties. But we go through substantial hoops as a result of the kind of concerns that were expressed by Mr. Lightning. The idea of government taking private property is looked upon very, very dimly in this country, and therefore the rules that we must follow and the steps that we must take are extremely onerous. As you just heard, there was one property on this list of 3 that is owned by a bank. There is one property on this list that has had ongoing problems for nearly 2 decades, and only now are we taking a vote which may start the process of resolution over the course of the next year. So this is a very, very slow, very, very thoughtful process, and it is designed by its very nature to not be quick and not be easy for government to be able to make these kinds of decisions. I think the auditor picked very wisely with these 3 particular homes. They all provide substantial risk to the rest of the neighborhood, and I strongly support the passage of this ordinance. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you. Next item 270 is a second reading.
Item 270, create a local improvement district to construct street, sidewalk, stormwater, and sanitary sewer improvements in the Northeast 57th Avenue and Killingsworth Street Local Improvement District.
So, colleagues, this is an item that has been brought previously for a first reading, for a presentation. It has had testimony. It's come back for second reading, and I don't know if you have more to add or if my colleagues have further questions for you.
I think Andrew has a lot to add to this.
Very
point.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioner Saltzman, Andrew Abbey, Local Improvement District Administrator. So this project has had a lot of moving parts. Since we started it, there have been a lot of discussions over the past week. We think that we have a good pathway forward, and that pathway forward is not continuing to turn our back on Coley, which is the only majority-minority neighborhood in Portland that has some pretty severe infrastructure deficiencies. So I just want to signal to the council that I think walking away and kicking the can down the road and doing nothing is not on our preferred list of options. We have had some very good discussions with the community that require a new procedural approach, which is to say that we can't use the existing LID to address some of the larger issues. So we are working through those. I've had some very good conversations with the neighbors in the past few days. I'm providing you an administrative recommendation under City Code to vote no on this ordinance today. The effect of that will be that it will close out the pending liens for the current LID, and we will continue those discussions with the neighbors. I expect to be reaching back out to them in April, and I would be expecting to bring something back before the council that a little bit more comprehensively deals with the infrastructure issues in Coley. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I just have a comment. I want to thank you, and I sent you a personal email, but I want to say this publicly. I hold you up as one example of a public employee who works for the city of Portland who goes beyond the basic job description and the call of duty. Colleagues, after our last conversation on this, Andrew actually met with representatives of the neighborhood over the weekend and has continued to meet with them, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Commissioner, anything
I
else?
just want to add my appreciation, too, for your hard work on behalf of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Call the roll, please.
Fritz.
So let me be very clear. I was ready to vote yes, and but for Mr. Abbey's advice, I would still be voting yes. I believe there should be a connected street here. I believe it is in the public interest to have that street, and I believe that the concerns of increased traffic will be resolved over the years as more connections are done, and they won't be resolved unless we can have connections. So I know that you share those values, Andrew, and so I trust that when it comes back, there will still be a finished street in this location, and yet I do appreciate the extra time that you're willing to spend to try to get to more consent, more understanding amongst the community. I appreciate the participation of Habitat, and that's also a value that their project should need to go forward as expeditiously as possible. So I know that you will come back to us as quickly as you can with a resolution. Thank you. No.
Fish.
I want to echo the mayor's comments. I've had the privilege of presentations from Andrew over the last 10 years, and frankly, if you were a professional baseball player, I think you'd be an all-star closer. And it is remarkable how you end up building consensus. If you're telling us that we need to hit the pause button now and try a different approach, I think we should give you that opportunity, and I have great confidence in your ability to come back with an alternative approach. Thanks very much for your work. No.
Softman.
No.
Udaley.
Well, thanks, Andrew, for all your work. Thank you also for helping me gain a greater understanding of the LID process and issues. Thank you for being committed to seeing this through, even though we are all voting no today. So regretfully, I vote no.
Wheeler.
So, like Commissioner Fritz, I was prepared to vote for this. I think ultimately the benefits here outweigh the negative concerns, but I am trusting you when you say you believe there's an opportunity here for more of a consensus-based approach and that you can address some of the issues that have been raised during previous testimony. I trust you on that, so for that reason, I will vote no. The ordinance fails.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Next item, 276.
276, authorize application and accept a grant in the amount of $25,999 and approach $12,000 fiscal year 2017-18 from the Oregon Department of Transportation Traffic Safety Division fiscal year 2018 Safety Belt Grant Program for Sworn Personnel Overtime Reimbursement.
Colleagues, we have Officer Bill Balzer here from the Traffic Division to present. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. Like the Mayor said, I'm Officer Bill Balzer with the Portland Police Traffic Division. I've been with the Police Bureau almost 22 years now, and I've managed this grant since 2005. This grant is essentially for overtime enforcement, but also education in seatbelt enforcement, and it's also kind of fallen into now a distracted driver thing, because when we're looking for seatbelts, we also sue people on cell phones right up by the seatbelts. So it goes in together. The benefit with it is that for all seatbelt violations, a certificate is given where we work in partnership with Emmanuel Hospital and the Emmanuel Nurse Tough Talk program, and they go and give information on the importance of wearing safety belts. So it's an overtime through the traffic division. It's traffic division officers that have additional training in it, as well as information on DUI detection.
I have a question, sir. What is the current law in Portland concerning the use of seatbelts in the rear seats of a vehicle?
So seatbelts have to be used what the law is right now is if there's 5 seatbelts in a car and there's 5 people in the car, all seatbelts have to be used by one person. You can't double buckle, so if a family has multiple kids, you can't put 2 kids in one seatbelt. Obviously, if there's not 5 passengers in that car, you only have to use a seatbelt where someone's seated. But even in the rear seat, if there's a seatbelt there, it has to be used.
Okay, and I think this is more for PBOT than for you. I'm not sure that's clearly communicated by TNCs or taxi cabs in the city, some of which have seatbelts, some of which have seatbelts that don't work, and there isn't clear signage saying that people sitting in the passenger seat in the back have to use a seatbelt. So I think food for thought. It might be beneficial to do a little public education around that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? Any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
Please call the roll.
Fritz?
Thank you for your work. Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you for coming in. We appreciate it, officer. Next item, 277, please.
Item 277, grant a franchise to Sprint Communications Company, LP for telecommunications services for a period of up to 10 years.
Vote only.
This is a second reading.
Yeah, is there any further comment or discussion on this item?
I'm sorry.
Please call the roll. I'm sorry, 277. This is the grant of franchise to Sprint Communications.
Got it, sorry.
Call the roll.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, 278.
278, approve interim use of the multiple unit limited tax exemption program to capture opportunities for affordable housing and housing developments not subject to inclusionary housing, and amend the administrative rules.
Colleagues, the multiple unit limited tax exemption, or multi, is a proven tool that we can use to get affordable units into the pipeline in the near term. We're in a housing crisis, as you're all aware, and the need is immediate. Not doing anything means that all of the units that are under consideration, that is the 10,000 units in the pipeline that are in the pipeline prior to the inclusionary housing ordinance coming into effect, all of those units will be market rate in the absence of this multi-program being approved. Not doing anything means that we lose the opportunity to ensure that we are taking the housing crisis as seriously as possible. I've worked with my colleagues to find what we believe is the sweet spot on the cap on individual projects. Before we, Portland Housing Bureau staff is here today to walk us through or answer any further questions that you may have. Where's my Portland Housing Bureau staff? Seriously?
I think we were running really far behind, and now we suddenly, thanks to the previous...
Yeah, well, I frankly expect people to be more on the ball. Could you call item number 279, please? We'll hold 278 open.
Item 279, accept Bureau of Environmental Services 10-year strategic plan.
Commissioner Fish.
Thank you. Mayor, because we were looking at about an hour's delay, my team, here they are. Mike, why don't you come to the table? It's quite an appearance. Colleagues, today I'm excited to have the Bureau of Environmental Services share with you their new strategic plan. The plan is the culmination of 18 months of work by BES staff and community members, including the Bureau's oversight bodies, the Portland Utility Board, and the Oregon Citizens Utility Board. BES manages Portland's wastewater and stormwater infrastructure to protect public health and the environment. And this plan will put BES on a path to become a fully sustainable utility in 10 years. I'm especially proud to see BES continuing to be a leader in innovative, cost-effective green infrastructure. I'd like to introduce BES Director Mike Jordan and Assistant Director Dawn Uchiyama to give a brief presentation today. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. For the record, my name is Mike Jordan. I'm the Director of the Bureau of Environmental Services, and this mic is pretty hot, so I'm trying to get away from it a little bit. As the Commissioner mentioned, here today with the Assistant Director, Dawn Uchiyama, to present the Bureau's 10-year strategic plan. Dawn will go through the plan for you and our approach, but first I'd like to give just a few comments regarding some kind of context. The first is why now? The short and simple answer is that the Bureau had a strategic plan, a 5-year strategic plan, that was up for renewal in 2016. One of the, I think, critical conversations that we had in trying to re-up that strategic plan was that we really wanted, and you'll see in the presentation, we really wanted to have a plan that could articulate the outcomes that this Bureau is trying to manifest in the community by doing our work. What were the things that we wanted this community to realize as we do the work? So pay particular attention when you look at the plan to the outcomes that are in the different goal categories. Secondly, why 10 years? Most people believe that it's very difficult to predict the future, even a couple of years out. And we believe that we're in the 100-year business. And when we make decisions about investments and when we make decisions about program, we often have to think in terms of decades and even centuries. And so we believe that having a 10-year plan forces us to continue to keep the long view in mind when we're making decisions about our investments and about our organization. And then third, and I think probably most importantly, strategic plans are certainly important in their content. They help direct us. But I believe that just as important when doing strategic planning is first of all, how you go about doing them, who you engage and how you actually produce the plan and who owns it when you're done. And then secondly, and I think what we forget often, is how you use them once they are done. I think we in the public sector are fairly guilty in some cases of producing coffee table books that are really wonderful and beautiful and have lots of great words in them, but we don't use them after we've produced them. And so, first of all, I'm really proud of how the Bureau went about this and the engagement of the members of the Bureau. And that is predominantly due to the work of the steering committee, which you'll see the names of those people in the inside back cover of the plan. They really get most of the credit for the engagement portion of this plan and energizing the Bureau around the work. And then secondly, this notion of how we use the plan. I have a vision that we would take this plan and be able to have an annual strategic budget summit in September each year, where we would take the metrics of this plan, which will be associated with the outcomes, look backwards and really see how we've done and ask the really hard why questions. Why did we do great on that? Why didn't we do great on this? And have a conversation about that why question, and only then look forward for the coming year in the budget and 5 years in our financial projections, as we do every year, and make adjustments to our strategies, make adjustments to our investment patterns, think about our organization in terms of being continually improving in the way we do our work. Lastly, in my remarks, I want to make two thanks for this. One, I want to thank Commissioner Fish. When I came to this job, he insisted that I hire an assistant director. And I will say that without Don Uchiyama's leadership on this, we would not have completed this the way we did. It would not have had the level of engagement, and we wouldn't have had the great product that we have. So thank you to both of you, and I'll turn it over to Don for the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners, for having us here today. It's a pleasure. I want to call your attention first to the timeline that I've handed out. The first side is our early history, and I like to think about that as the reason why we're here. It defines why BES is doing the work that we're doing. And then the flip side is our more recent history, and it's a reminder of our accomplishments, our amazing accomplishments, and then also some lessons learned. And this was the first thing we did when we kicked off this exercise. We reflected on our past.
So I have a question about that timeline. It says 2015, first at-will director, Michael Jordan, appointed to Environmental Services. No, that's not correct. I mean, Dean Marriott was an at-will.
No, he wasn't.
No, he wasn't.
He was actually by civil service because he predated the charter change.
Oh, okay.
He was the lone holdover, Dan, and it
That's right, okay.
explains why it was a little more complicated.
Okay.
Okay, great. That's okay. So anyway, a good reference for us and a starting point for us. But as Mike said, this plan is really about the stakeholders that helped us make it, especially our employees, 570 of them, the steering committee. We started out with an anonymous all-employee survey. We had a 75% response rate, which is just remarkable for surveys. We did numerous interviews and focus groups, and we had extremely strong support from the Bureau leadership team and from our management team. In addition to the employees that contributed and made this possible, external stakeholders also played a huge role. We consulted with city council offices, with the Public Utility Board, Portland Utility Board, the Citizens Utility Board, other bureau directors, agency leaders, over 20 environmental and conservation groups, community and customer groups, business and industry, and academic institutions. And it's because of this engagement, the plan is what it is. 5 major themes emerged from this work: community responsiveness, focus on equity and diversity, collaborative partnerships, workforce development, and infrastructure preparedness. And when I get into the priorities, you can see how they line back up with the needs that the stakeholders identified. The plan is organized with a structure or framework that's fairly classic. We start with our mission, vision, and values. We have 6 goals. We've described desired outcomes, as Mike pointed out. We have 29 strategic initiatives, a number of action items, and then our metrics. We'll be implementing the priority action items and the performance metrics this year. In addition to looking at our history and engaging our stakeholders, one really important step that we took in the process was acknowledging our role in city government, that we're just one of 27 bureaus, and that the work we do is in that context. And although we are assigned wastewater and stormwater, environmental compliance and lab services, watershed protection, and we have business system support and customer support responsibilities, our role in city government is critical to us achieving our mission. So we refreshed our mission statement. BES manages Portland's wastewater and stormwater infrastructure to protect public health and the environment. And we updated our vision statement. BES is a mission-driven, high-performance organization leading the city in preserving and restoring the health of Portland's watersheds. The next part of the presentation orients you to the goals and the strategic priorities. We have 6 goals, as I mentioned, and I'm going to start in the right-hand corner with service delivery as kind of the anchor of our strategic initiatives. To make those successful, we need responsive systems and decision-making. The next 2 are paired in terms of workforce development, treating our employees and giving them opportunity for growth, and influencing our bureau culture and how that affects how we get our work done. The next 2 are also paired. What is our role in leadership in city government, and then our commitment to community relations. And we didn't prioritize the goals. We see them interwoven and interrelated. So the next few slides are about the priorities in each of those goal areas. And as we've mentioned, performance metrics are a really big part of this work. We know that the mayor and that the city budget office is very concerned and interested in how we measure our progress. We know that the Portland Utility Board and Citizens Utility Board has a great interest in this, as well as our customers and employees. So out of the gate, that's our #1 priority. The next 3 are more around some of our business systems, and maybe you've heard that BES is looking at their CIP process delivery, project delivery work, and we've looked at our biggest business system, and we're looking at integrated planning, portfolio management, and project delivery, and inter-bureau coordination. We've got some great work ahead on that front. We're also reinvigorating our asset management program, and we're committed to comprehensive data management strategies, citywide and both within the Bureau. The workforce development and Bureau culture goals really brought forth some great ideas from our employees, and we recognized that this was an area that we really had a lot of work to do. And we have prioritized equity and diversity training and professional development, social equity contracting, our recruitment, and our annual reporting. We're looking at a pilot for a job rotation so that we can give employees the opportunity to take on different roles within the organization. And then we're also looking at a workforce development and culture professional support and bringing in some training and other employee support. We have existing committees within the organization, the Committee for Workplace Excellence, Equity and Diversity, our peer program I hope you've heard about, our Employee Recognition Committee, and our Management Excellence. That additional professional and technical support will be to support those existing committees and to sort out what employees do as almost volunteers and within the organization, and then what do we do systemically to make these changes permanent. Then the last area is leadership in city government and community relations. We have taken a strong position and are very committed to the idea of proactive coordination and collaboration, especially with our infrastructure agencies. PBOT and BES in particular have a leadership team that are bringing and coordinating the work. We work very closely with the Water Bureau and working with the Public Utility Board and reviewing our work there. We know that Portland Parks is a big partner, Office of Management and Finance as well. We're connected at the hip with the Portland Utility Board and Citizen Utility Board, and we know they're interested in our levels of service and budget development. The last two items, we heard loud and strong from our external stakeholder engagement, the importance of strengthening our community relations and being more proactive. We're doing some work now around audience identification and messaging and working with community engagement liaisons to reach historically underrepresented communities. The last initiative I'll highlight in these priorities is our citywide green infrastructure agenda. We are committed to working with PSU and the Institute for Sustainable Solutions to get a citywide strategy for a green infrastructure agenda. So that's a quick flyover of our priorities that came out of the 29 initiatives that we identified. And I just want to say a little bit about metrics. We're organizing our metrics looking at the intersection of quantity and quality versus effort and effect. So we'll be describing our work in these terms. And we're kicking off an effort now to engage our business services group as a pilot, and we're preparing a bureau-wide team to prepare the metrics for the next budget discussion this fall. As Mike mentioned, we'll be doing another budget summit this fall. So the idea and the instruction from Mike when we got this started was that this needed to be in rhythm with the annual budget and financial planning cycle. We know that this year we did our best to fit our requests and our budget structure within the strategic goal framework, but it's the first time we're kind of trying it on, so it's still a work in progress. But we anticipate in future budget cycles that we'll be able to align all of our budget elements to the strategic initiatives and the performance measures. And we'll consider this a year-round exercise, assessing our decisions and measuring it against the outcomes that we've decided. And we're expecting that full integration will take multiple years. So the last slide, I just want to welcome you to join us in our strategic future. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to work with our employees and Mike Jordan and this council on getting this work done. And as Mike likes to say, now the hard part starts. So we like to think about the plan being done, but this is really just the beginning. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I'm not sure if there's someone, there may be others here to testify.
I think we have, who signed up to testify?
Mike Hauk is here to testify.
And is he the only one who's signed up?
Yes.
Mr. Hauk, come on up. Good morning. Thank you for being here.
My name is Mike Hauk. I'm here representing the Urban Green Spaces Institute. And I've had the pleasure of serving on the interview committee for the job that she got. And I think you can understand why we were so high on Dawn at the end of that process. And actually, one more comment before I get into my testimony. I looked at the timeline, and I noticed that 1983 was when it became the Bureau of Environmental Services, prior to which it was a sewage bill. And I can say I've been involved every step of the way since 1983, and I continue to stay involved. I'm here on behalf of the Urban Green Spaces Institute and several partners, including Audubon Society Portland, Greenworks PC, Landscape Architecture Firm, and others. And I guess we consider ourselves an ad hoc green infrastructure advisory group, I guess, to the city. You might think of this as a cabal, or maybe the green infrastructure mafia or something along those lines. We've followed development of the plan for some time and have provided input at every step of the way. We're impressed with this comprehensive nature and strongly support its adoption, but mostly its implementation, to Don's final comment. On the point of implementation, I want to highlight one element that was presented this morning. The partnership BES is established with Portland State University's Institute for Sustainable Solutions. We have met with Fletcher Bedoin and Robert Liberty, who is the Institute's director. The Institute has, and they made this very clear recently, both financial, so they actually can bring money to the table, research and policy resources to bring to the table, and we feel is a critical partner in ensuring that the strategy is in fact implemented with input from and on the ground work from all city bureaus, not just BES. Mayor Wheeler, given the importance of an all-city approach, all hands on deck, that should sound familiar to some of you who remember Charles Jordan, implementation of the plan across city bureaus, we look to you for your leadership in helping make that happen. And we look forward to having a conversation soon to discuss that with you. Commissioners, each of you have a role in the plan's implementation, and we feel this is an exciting opportunity to actually do what we talk about all the time, break down silos and collaborate across bureaus, and obviously with stakeholders. We look forward as partners to work with all of you in your bureaus to make the strategic plan on the ground reality. Thank you.
Great, and thank you, Mike, for your testimony. And yes, I look forward to that conversation, and I'd love to hear more about your perspective on how we can collaborate. This is another opportunity, and you were here earlier to hear the technology presentation that will drive us to collaboration. And I'd love to hear your perspectives on that.
Thank you.
That concludes our presentation, Mayor.
I'll accept the motion.
Move to accept the, is it a report?
Report.
Report.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Udaley, a second from Commissioner Fritz. Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Well, thank you for all your work. It's very impressive, and as you say, the difficult part is now implementing it.
Thank you.
Fish.
Mayor and colleagues, I'm about to hit my 5th year anniversary at the helm of the Bureau of Environmental Services, and I asked the team to blow up this chart because I thought the historical timeline was so interesting. Yeah. And while I feel like it's been a really busy 5 years, it barely covers one column on the far right side on the front page. And Mike has reminded us that there's just a lot of stuff that's happened over time. One milestone that I want to call out in particular, though, is on the back of the sheet. And the date is 1952, and that's when our first wastewater treatment plant opened. And I know that sounds amazing, and people are going to scratch their head and say, how can that be? But it's because, frankly, the Willamette River used to basically serve as an open sewer. And it was 1952 we opened our first wastewater treatment plant. Fast forward, we've now figured out a way to take the byproduct of all that sewage, which is methane gas, and turned it into renewable natural gas, which is going to power our system, power our trucks and our cars, and also produce a profit for our ratepayers. We've gone deep into green infrastructure, something that Mike Hauk has provided unparalleled leadership and advocacy around, and a lot of things have happened. What is really exciting to me about this strategic plan, in addition to all the things that Dawn highlighted, the level of collaboration, the full buy-in by employees and stakeholders and others, and then I think the vision that is being presented, is that Director Jordan has proposed something pretty radical, and that is that in 10 years we become a fully sustainable bureau. And what that means is he's saying in 10 years when we get those annual reports that document the state and the status of our infrastructure, that close to 100% of the infrastructure of this very complicated bureau will be in good condition. And that rather than having to invest in addressing catastrophic failures or other kinds of failures, will be investing in maintaining good infrastructure going forward. And he is proposing to do this while simultaneously funding programs the community wants, green infrastructure, protecting our watersheds, and a number of other things, and keeping annual rate increases below the rate of inflation. If the Bureau is successful, and I'll just make a, I mean, it is likely that that 10-year milestone will happen with me in the audience and not up here, we will once again be a first. We'll be the first municipal sewage bureau, now BES, that has cracked this code. Now, it is true that we have an advantage that PBOT doesn't have, and a lot of our other infrastructure bureaus don't have, which is that we have dedicated revenue. And we're very fortunate to have that, and we don't take that for granted. But it is within our grasp to be a fully sustainable bureau, and I think that is just an amazing thing to shoot for, and I'm not going to bet against this team. I know there's other people from the Bureau that are here in the audience. I want to thank them for their service and just tell them it is with just such a point of pride for me to be associated with so many wonderful public servants. It is a very complicated Bureau. It is very challenging, but it is an honor to be part of this team. And today I'm pleased to support this vision and vote aye.
Salzman.
Well, I appreciate both the timeline and the vision, the plan. And I feel confident in the employees and the leadership at BES, which includes the commissioner in charge, that they will deliver on this plan. So thank you. Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
Wheeler.
I regret this timeline. My mom, who's nearly 88, still talks about a swim she had with her grandfather. They swam across the Willamette River in 1939, and she's still giddy about it. But Commissioner Fish, looking at this blown-up timeline, that means that it was an open sewer at the time, which may help to explain some things about me. I think this is a fabulous vision, and I'm energized by it, and I'm excited by it, and I really appreciate the work, Commissioner Fish, that you've put into this. And to Mike and your entire team, I want to thank you, and Mike Hauk and all the people in the community who are really passionate about this subject. This is a great blueprint for us. And as Mike admonished us in his testimony, the blueprint is the first step, and now comes the action that follows the blueprint. And I'm really excited to be part of that. I know my whole team is, so I look forward to it. I vote aye. The report's accepted. Thank you. Great work.
Thank you all.
Colleagues, we still have item number 278 open. It has been read. I have given my statement. This is a continuation. We have already taken public testimony on this item. However, I had a request from Brad Mulson, who is here today. If he could testify, I would like to extend that courtesy before we invite the Housing Bureau up. Good morning, Brad.
Good morning. Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Brad Malson, Central Eastside Industrial Council President and Beam Development, and the founding board member of the Innovation Quadrant. I'm here to support the multi-program, but I'm here to read to give you a sense of caution that I'm seeing out in the world of development right now. And there is a lot of fear and hesitation and challenge to keep our development cycle going. The land prices are escalating, construction costs are escalating beyond reason, and people are fearful, developers are fearful that with inclusionary zoning, we can't make a lot of projects work. As I think most of you know, there's a theory that if we reduce the amount of residential development, and I'm not specifically a residential developer, but I have done some and I still continue to do. So I'm concerned about the effect on affordable housing. It seems contrary to reason that we would build more market rate and how it would affect, but it obviously creates an environment where we can leverage affordable housing, and the competition works to drive down prices at some point. With that said, I'm also concerned about the design review. I'm concerned about the recent occurrence of the project in the Pearl that was squashed.
I'm sorry, but we can't talk about that. That's in a separate
we can't?
process.
Sorry.
Yeah,
We can't take
that
testimony.
process is not concluded, so
Okay.
please, yeah.
I
thanks.
withdraw that.
Move on.
Anyway, so I'm here to support multi. I'm here to try to create the context of supporting development, smart development, conscious development, local development that I think will bolster opportunities for everyone. So with that, I welcome any questions that you might have.
I have one question.
Commissioner Fish.
We had a chance in the last hearing to ask two experts, if we adopt this, will someone take advantage of it? Now, I'm going to support this proposal in the hope that it encourages someone. You're an active developer. Can you tell us whether you are hopeful that with this tweak, someone who beat the deadline on inclusionary housing will in fact take advantage of this additional incentive plan?
I'm convinced that it's another tool in the toolbox for us to look at. We have to layer in all of the opportunities, and as a development community, I think that this is a program that we can use to move forward. Absolutely.
Okay, that sounds like maybe leaning yes.
Leaning yes.
I mean, obviously there are a lot of market conditions. I mean, it is staggering. We have 3 years of development in the pipeline that beat the inclusionary housing deadline. So that'll take 3 years to clear the pipeline if it's all built. We have a crane on every corner of the city. We've never seen, the Bureau of Development Services has never seen so many permits pulled and so much revenue. So we're obviously all interested in continuing to support a robust housing market. The concern that I think this council has demonstrated time and time again is that the market is not serving a lot of people. There are people to whom the market is not serving right now. And that's why we need to look at a mix of carrots and sticks. And it is, I think, the mayor's hope that this proposal on multi will encourage some developers to step up, and maybe you'll be one of them, but we hope that there are people who do take advantage of this.
I believe that will be the case. And realize, as you well know, the development cycle takes 3 to 4 years between concept to, delivering to the market. So we're reaching that point right now where things will change. We'll hit a cliff, and I believe that residential development will fall significantly unless we take some action.
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll call up Shannon Callahan and Matt Chibold from the Housing Bureau. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. Shannon Callahan from the Portland Housing Bureau, joined by Dory Van Bockel, the Development Incentive Teams Manager, and Matt Chibold, Assistant Director.
Thank you. Thanks, all three of you. Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor. As Commissioner Fish just said, I know we all are concerned about the ongoing provision of housing in general and affordable housing. I have some questions about this particular proposal. So what is the average exemption per unit per month for the affordable units?
So in our analysis, looking back a couple of years into the multi-program, the tax exemption per affordable unit on average would equal to $833 per month.
And what is the expected average market rate of these units?
We, newly constructed units in the central city on average are going for $2,000 a month. Across the city, newly constructed units are approximately $1,700 a month.
So in the central city, we would be enabling somebody to live in a $2,000 a month apartment for about $1,100 a month?
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay. Do we know how many units this overall will, if it worked out to the maximum $3 million a year, how many units overall?
We would expect 300 affordable units, Commissioner.
For $3 million?
Yes.
Okay.
Not for $3 million. The $3 million is the cap for all of the tax abatement
But that's
programs.
the tax abatement per year for 300 units.
For the $3 million cap, yes.
For across all of our programs?
In this program.
In this program.
So what
I'm sorry, Commissioner, have we?
I just don't want to muddle the record here. We have a $3 million cap with the county for all tax abatement programs. With the multi-program, we're capturing the value that has not been used, but the cap has not been lifted.
We would propose to remain within the agreed upon cap with the county. The number of units that we would expect to receive from a $3 million foregone revenue would be approximately 300 affordable units.
And this is the only program that's in this program at this point, right?
Commissioner, the inclusionary housing program would still be under the same cap that Commissioner Fish is speaking of, but it's all together combined. So we would not be increasing the cap overall.
Okay, and we're not expecting to get any inclusionary housing because of the rush of applications before the deadline is for the next 2 years.
We have received some inclusionary housing proposals, but we are confident that we will be able to remain within the cap. In addition, the $3 million was agreed last year by the county to be on a rolling basis so we can meet the highs and lows of a development cycle in a 5-year period.
Okay, so I am concerned about a $900 a unit subsidy for new construction. When I was a low-income wage earner, I didn't expect to be able to live in new construction. I lived in fairly substandard housing and would have appreciated a much deeper assistance had it been available rather than $900 going to live in brand new. And that's just obviously it's a policy choice. Are the market rate units in the projects allowed unlimited rent increases?
We do not regulate the market rate units for the multi-program, so they would be under the same state and local laws. So they are allowed to raise rents in accordance with state law, but they would be subject to the City Council's mandatory relocation assistance policy.
And then back to the question of the caps. Does the $100,000 per development, does that tend to then favor the smaller developments? Because the larger ones would bang up against it.
Our intent was to exclude what would be considered luxury high-end apartment buildings. And so that's why we did a per project cap. And it could benefit more units that were outside the central city than inside based on that $500,000 per project cap.
Okay. And you just mentioned relocation. At the end of 10 years, the rents will go up by at least $900 a month, so presumably these tenants will need to move out. These tenants will then be eligible for relocation assistance?
They would be if they met the parameters. We don't have experience with seeing what happens after year 10, but yes, they would meet current City Council policy.
Thank you. And for projects with an FAR floor area ratio of 5:1 or more, the only choice is 20% at 80% median family income. Why are we not allowing the choice of 10% at 60% median family income? Because that's what we got in the inclusionary housing.
I believe we would allow that, but we do not require that as a basis for the tax exemption. If they wanted to give us deeper affordability, we would allow that, but it would not be a requirement of that building type.
But it's a different level, so it's 10%. Under inclusionary housing, it's 10% at 60% or 20% at 80%. So there'd be no incentive for them to do 10% at 60% because that wouldn't get you to 20%. So why are we not just mirroring what we've got in inclusionary housing?
The tax exemption at 10% at 60% under this program, I don't know if we have the calculation, but it would double. We think we'd be over enriching.
Okay.
And the reason that inclusionary zoning, Commissioner, was set up with 20% at 80 and 10 at 60 is because we're the need in the city is at 60% clearly, but we're required by state statute. We cannot require anything that is lower than 80%. So it was our way, your way of trying to encourage the production of 60% units.
Well, that was why I'm wondering why we're not doing it in this program, because as you just said, the need is at 60%, not really at 80%. So we're spending $30 million, or forgiving $30 million, not taking in $30 million, which we could otherwise spend elsewhere, to get 80% medium-income housing. Is that correct?
We would be allowing 80% housing and FAR 5 and above. That is essentially the central city area. It could be a policy choice that this council could make to lower the inclusion rate and require it 60%, but that is a very rich tax exemption product per unit.
Okay. You've got information in here about accessibility, about 5% accessible, adaptable, which I appreciate because I think the state mandate is only 2%, which is... so given that some of these projects will be smaller, is that 5% or 1, whichever is greater?
Yes.
Good. And then thank you, Dori van Bokkel, for providing information that I asked for last hearing about the tax exemptions. And in looking at the numbers of total affordable units and the estimated foregone revenues, the numbers are not at all the same as $900 a month. The average in 2015 was $400 a month. The average in 2016 was $600. In 17, it was $337. And in year to date, it's only been $90 a unit is what we've forgiven, according to these numbers. So it seems this program that's proposed is doubly, more than twice as generous.
In the data used for our presentation that Matt gave last week, it was taking out projects that also had additional subsidy or were for other reasons providing additional affordable units. And so looking at any pool of data in a particular way, we wanted to show the worst or most that we could be providing based on purely for-profit developments.
Okay, well, obviously these are my concerns, and I think $900 a unit could be, if we had that, we could direct it into rent assistance elsewhere. That would be a better way to go. This is an emergency ordinance. You need unanimous consent to pass it, Mayor, so I'm going to go talk to a man about a dog, and I'll be back in a few minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions? Please call the roll.
Fish.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the mayor for bringing this forward, and I want to thank the Housing Bureau for the briefings that we've received and the answers to our questions. We heard some sobering statistics the other day when the Housing Bureau presented at budget time. And Madam Director, you'll correct me if I get this wrong, but we've identified that there's about at least 24,000 units of deeply affordable housing that we're short in the marketplace. And we're also seeing a lot of so-called luxury housing coming online that's out of the reach of middle-income working families and the poor. So when there's a market mismatch, it seems to me it is incumbent on government to act to remedy that, and the market is not working great for lower income people, so it is our job to take some action. As my colleagues know, I am very focused on people that of very modest means, because I think if we had $1 to spend, I would always prefer to create a subsidy for someone who's really struggling on the margins. But the truth is, our housing crisis is affecting people throughout the spectrum. We have an enormous number of renters who are cost burdened. Now they have a roof over their head, but they're spending way too much money of their income on their rent, and therefore they don't have resources for other necessities of life. We've got people living on our streets, and we've got people doubled up on couches and in cars, and we've got people that can't find an affordable unit. We also learned that the success rate for Section 8 is in the 70s, which is well below what we as a community hope to get to. So the mayor has proposed a tool which, in my view, is an imperfect tool, and it's not even my favorite tool. But it does offer the promise of getting some affordable units. And I think in a crisis, we should be opportunistic. And here's why ultimately I'm persuaded we should do this. You've made some tweaks to the program, which I like. You've engaged the development community, and we think someone's going to take advantage of this. We hope so. Even at 80%, that is an area that there is need in our community. Although I'm pleased that most of our federal dollars and our tax increment dollars and other programs target lower on the income range, and by policy, we focus on people in greater need. But this has the promise to adding something, and I want to address the one question that was put on the table a couple of minutes ago about what might we do with this money if we had an alternative. One of the things that I think we lose track of is that it is a cornerstone value, not just of the federal government through HUD, but it is a cornerstone value of your Bureau, that we invest in opportunity. And that means that our long-term goal is that if you are low income, if you're a low-income family and you're choosing where to live, you'll have the same choices at some point that people who are more affluent have. People that can decide where they want to live and where they want to send their kids to school. And opportunity is a cornerstone of what we do. And it is the reason that we've accepted this trade-off about putting some affordable units in new construction in places that are nice. Because we want people to have the choice to live in neighborhoods that have good transportation and parks and infrastructure. And that's the kind of community we want to be. So it's not my favorite program for a number of reasons. Yes, I would love to serve people lower down the income stream. But it is, in a crisis, it is another tool. And that's what Brad Melson said. It's another tool in the kit, which we hope someone takes advantage of. It operates within the $3 million cap that we've already agreed to, so it's really not competing against other programs, because we've already said we'll set aside $3 million a year for this and other programs, and that's baked in. And frankly, while I've heard some sort of on the margins, some criticisms about this, I haven't heard something which convinces me we shouldn't try. And I think we should be willing to try things. And I know you'll come back to us in 2 years, and if you think this program wasn't as successful as we hoped or needed to be refined, you'll come back with suggestions. And finally, because we know this program has to be renewed by the legislature in a couple years, I want to pick up on a comment we've heard from one of my colleagues and some people testifying, that I think we should ask for the authority in any new program that's authorized by the legislature to offer a 10-year renewal at the 60% level. Because my guess is that if we made one change in this program that got more developers interested, it is giving people an objective test and certainty that there could be a 10-year renewal, which doubles the benefit and limits the likelihood that someone will be displaced from that unit because they're now above income. That's a long-winded way of saying I'm persuaded that this is worth trying. Again, thank you, Mayor Wheeler, for bringing it forward. Aye.
Saltzman.
Well, I do believe this is a well-intentioned proposal and one I will support. And I appreciate Mayor Wheeler for bringing this forward. I guess I want to express my concern about sort of the drumbeat we just heard from Brad Molson, and we're starting to hear from many people that, inclusionary housing spells the end of the world. We're going to fall off a cliff. There's going to be no residential development in Portland in 3 to 4 years. And I hope this council will not listen to that. I hope this council will be resolute in its insistence that inclusionary housing is as much a bedrock of developing a residential project in the city of Portland, and that's what it needs to become. It's a bedrock, it's not going to change, and it has to be accepted by the development community as much as compliance with fire code or building code is. These are things that are not debatable. That's what inclusionary housing must become. When it becomes that, and this council and the state legislature indicate they're not going to yield on it, then it will be accepted, and it will no longer be a discussion point. But right now we're hearing, drumbeats, innuendos, and everything, setting inclusionary housing up to be the fall person when the economy does cool down and residential development does cool down. It's going to happen. We all know that. And I think it's just important. I'm going to be speaking out now, but I do hope this council will remain resolute in its insistence that, as Commissioner Fish just said, that people of modest means have the right to live in these good projects, in these good neighborhoods, with good access to education, transit, and amenities that everybody else deserves. They don't deserve to be pushed out to the outskirts of our city or beyond our city. They need to have a place to live in the city of Portland. So I'm segued a little bit, but I was concerned about the testimony that was just given, and I just wanted to express that in this form. But I am pleased. And I also know that there's some 19,000 units that have presently vested and are not subject to inclusionary housing. Many of those permits are going to expire. Land use approvals will expire before those projects are ready to be built. So they're going to have to come back to us, and they're going to have to confront inclusionary housing, which I believe is a very worthy policy goal that this city worked very hard on to get the legislature to give us the permission to do it. And we worked very hard on this, and Shannon Callahan and Matt Shabold in particular worked very hard on making the policy that we adopted that took place a little over a year ago to be one that can work. So I'm pleased to vote aye.
Udaley.
Yeah, thank you for those remarks. I'm feeling a little verklempt right now. I want to also express my support in general for inclusionary zoning. I'm concerned that it's going to be used as a scapegoat for a downturn in development, which we knew was coming, I think, prior to the passage of this policy. I'm not convinced that we have the perfect equation for abatement and length of affordability, but I think we're close. So I'm open to those conversations, although I'm absolutely committed to keeping IZ in place. We have a shortage of affordable units. So today we're incentivizing affordability in new construction of units that are already in the pipeline. And since we know that we don't need 19,000 market rate or luxury units added to that, to our inventory, I think this is a smart move. I don't see it as a subsidy to renters, but to developers willing to partner with us and deliver the type of housing that we need, which is, in this case, workforce housing at 60 to 80%. Our dollar goes further in the short term. I mean, I don't want to make a claim that's not entirely true, but we're roughly giving an abatement. We're giving an abatement that's roughly equivalent to what we might invest in affordable housing, which is about $100,000 a unit. However, we'd expect a much longer affordability period than 10 years, but we're in a crisis. This housing is going to exist. Let's try to capture some of it. It's still half of what we would spend on building an affordable unit ourselves with our housing fund dollars. I vote aye.
Wheeler.
So I am more optimistic about the potential for this program. This is really the only way we can reach back into the pipeline that was in the pipeline prior to inclusionary housing becoming an ordinance here in the city of Portland. And so the reality is, as Commissioner Saltzman mentioned, those 19,000 units, of the ones that actually get built, let's say it's 10,000, they will all come on as market rate units. There will be no affordability, not 80% in the central city, not 60% outside of the central city. So the question is, do we want to use an abatement to incentivize that kind of activity? I have come to the conclusion that yes, we absolutely do want to do that. The second question then is one that was raised, I think, correctly by Commissioner Fritz. There is a policy call here. And the question is, if we instead waited for that market rate housing to actually be constructed and come on the market, we would collect taxes from that market rate housing. And then we could decide, rather than a subsidy through a tax abatement, whether we wanted to use the tax revenues on something else. And she had suggested we could use it perhaps in a different housing situation or for vouchers or other purposes that the council designates. That is a compelling argument. But the reality is, as the director has said, we're talking about 300-ish units. Personally, I think we'll do better than that, but let's say publicly 300 units out of 10 to 19,000 units. This is a small sliver of tax abatement in exchange for immediate affordability on a fairly limited number of units. Commissioner Fritz asked a great question about the 80% in the central city, and I just want to remind people that in the central city we're talking about tall steel and cement towers. The construction costs, therefore, per unit are higher, the rents per unit are higher, and if you go below that 80%, there are going to be very, very few takers for this abatement because it just factually, it won't pencil out. And we've done that analysis based on the historic multi-programs, and we've come to that conclusion. As far as the $500,000 per project, I think that is a reasonable cap based on historic standards that we've already demonstrated. I also want to address this issue of could we go lower? All of these projects, in fact, will come back to the City Council. And therefore, if the council chooses, we could go beyond the tax abatement. If we wanted to provide a direct subsidy from the general fund or other sources, that's still on the table. But that's not what this program is. This program is using tax abatement as a strategy to make it economically viable for developers who have every right now to develop only market rate housing, because they got in under the wire prior to inclusionary housing, to incentivize them instead to create some affordability throughout the city, including in the central city. So I think this is a very good addition to our portfolio of affordability. This will not solve the housing crisis, nor has anybody proposed that it would. But from my perspective, if we want affordability built now, the best place to look at is at all those projects that are going through the permitting process, that are going through their pre-development phase, that are ready to actually be built, and have some of those units, which could come on as soon as a year from now, be affordable, as opposed to when we work through new housing, even under inclusionary housing, that's going to take 3 or 4 years before we see that housing. And the crisis, as I said up front, is today. So I obviously wouldn't have brought this if I don't support it, so I'm voting aye. I support it. The ordinance is adopted. Next up, 280.
280, amend contract with Berger Abum, Inc. for the Tryon Creek at Boones Ferry Culvert Replacement Project, number E08682, in the amount of $316,298.
Commissioner Fish.
Colleagues, the Bureau of Environmental Services prioritizes their investments to reduce flooding and improve watershed health. The culvert under Southwest Boones Ferry Road has been identified for replacement to a bridge to allow for better stormwater flow and fish passage. The new bridge will allow pedestrians to pass below the busy Boones Ferry Road, as well as passage for wildlife and endangered salmon in Tryon Creek. Here today to join us are Environmental Program Manager Amin Wahab and Senior Engineer Eric Brennicke, both from Environmental Services, to give a brief presentation. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning, Commissioners and Mayor. My name is Eric Brennicke. I'm Project Manager of the Boones Ferry Culvert Replacement Project. Co-presenting with me is Amin Wahab, West Watershed Program Manager. This ordinance before you is to authorize contract amendment number 5 with Berger Abum Incorporated for the Tryon Creek at Boones Ferry Culvert Replacement Project in the amount of $316,298. The project is the culmination of years of facility planning, design, and community involvement, and stormwater management, stream restoration, and pedestrian wildlife advocacy. In this next couple slides, Amin will provide some brief history and overview.
Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners, good morning or good afternoon. In the interest of time, I will be brief. Earlier, Director Jordan said that the work we do, the decisions we make today are 100-year decisions. And this is, I believe, one of those decisions, replacing the current culvert under Boones Ferry Road on Tryon Creek to a bridge. I have a fairly long history with this culvert. Actually, it goes about a quarter century. Commissioner Fritz, Commissioner Saltzman, and now Commissioner Fish, you all have some history with this too. We first looked into this culvert in 1995 to 97 in the facilities planning process that the Bureau conducted, and the Boones Ferry culvert was identified as one of the key pieces of infrastructure in a culvert that was undersized to convey flows, and the 1996 February flooding was an indication of that. You will later on see some slides showing how high the water can rise. The project is to remove a 60-inch, 140-foot long corrugated metal pipe culvert. We have looked at this culvert over the years. It's resting at the bottom, so it is, has lived its lifespan, and it's pretty clear. And it will be replaced with a new bridge, a single-span steel girder bridge. And the replacement will allow not only for meeting, the facilities planning requirements or needs to convey, the flows, but also will allow for pedestrian connectivity from the upper parts of Tryon Creek with significant, natural areas to the lower part of Tryon Creek with the state natural area. But it will also kind of allow for fish and wildlife movement unimpeded. Boones Ferry Road is the second major impediment to fish movement after the Highway 43 culvert, and you probably are aware that there are efforts underway to have the Army Corps of Engineers to replace the Highway 43 culvert with a passable culvert. Along the way, we have been working with our colleagues at PUDL because Boones Ferry is a major arterial connecting Southwest Portland and Lake Oswego with the rest of the city. And it also, Tryon Creek is a key resource that it crosses.
Before you move on from that slide, Commissioner Fish, Dawn Uchiyama used to live right in the circle where the work zone is. And that was kind of one of the places where we dreamed up the Tryon Creek Watershed Council. So I'm wondering, is that house still there? I know she doesn't live there anymore, and is that going to be impacted by the work?
Well, we'll come to that later, but okay. This project has gone through about 5 years of, permitting, easements, and land acquisitions. The two properties downstream, Metro and BES acquired those two properties. We're in the process of basically, finalizing the transaction for those two properties okay. because of the need, that existed there, and then also for the trail connectivity. So that property will be acquired by Metro and the city, and the same with the property across the creek on the other side.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, we're cutting into the lunch hour because we're a little late, so I give you permission to speed up through the presentation.
And I have no further interruptions, sorry.
No, please.
So this culvert, after the 1997, facilities plan, we looked at it again in 2005 and then 2008 in the planning and the pre-design process. And in 2013, BES funded this as a capital improvement project to basically proceed with the design and construction of it. In September of 2013, BES signed a contract with Berger ABAM, for design services. And when that contract was signed, we took a pause to secure a grant from Metro of $650,000 because the advisory committee and the neighbors and other participants, they wanted to have a bridge instead of a culvert. So the Metro grant paid the difference, to pay for the cost of the increased cost for replacement of that with a bridge. In September 2015, City Council approved, the Metro grant for $650,000. That is for construction, so we have not tapped into that grant yet. And contract was renegotiated with Berger ABAM basically to proceed for the design of a bridge.
The project area is within the middle reach of Tryon Creek and Arnold Creek confluence. This is also some low-density residential use in the uplands of the watershed. A number of fish species can be found in the stream, such as steelhead trout, Chinook salmon, and coho salmon. The improvements to both Tryon and Arnold Creeks as a result of this project will expand upstream fish habitat and will provide significant benefits, especially for steelhead trout. This is the slide that Amin was referring to. On the upstream end of the culvert seen on the left side, which includes a concrete trash rack, impedes conveyance of flows. The picture on the right will show the December 7th, 2015 flood conditions that led to debris clogs at the concrete trash rack, causing flooding conditions and risk of flooding to local streams. And as you can see with my mouse right here, that's Boone's Ferry Road right there. I'd like to note that the height of the water surface elevation is above 15 feet from the channel bottom, as it was observed in the 1996 flood events. Those events were higher than these conditions without overtopping Boone's Ferry Road. By removing the existing culvert and providing a larger stream channel, all flow events will be conveyed underneath the bridge structure. The bridge will be sized to meet specific design criteria for stream flow while accommodating pedestrian and wildlife connectivity. BES staff have secured permits with the Department of State Lands, the Corps, and Bureau of Development Services. BES staff have also conducted extensive public involvement and outreach to property owners and partners such as Metro, Oregon Park and Regional District, Portland Parks and Recreation, PBOT, Southwest Trails, and neighborhood associations. I included this slide to illustrate the number of partners we have and also our composition of our advisory committee members. These are working partners. These partners are agencies, community groups, and property owners. For the project budget and schedule, Metro has awarded a grant for the bridge design with underpass for maximum fish, wildlife, and pedestrian passage. Total estimated project costs for BES was $6.4 million. Oregon Parks and Regional District contributed $30,000, and then the Metro grant was $650,000, as mentioned before. Our anticipated construction is to start in January 2019.
Is that $6 million, is that the project cost, the construction cost, or?
That's the total design, total life budget, including construction.
Okay.
What kind of fish is that?
I knew you were going to answer.
Sorry, never mind.
So it's a juvenile salmon, possibly coho. I had an expert try to let me know.
Thank you.
Where's my cap when we need it?
Yeah.
The ordinance before you is the amendment of the city's contract with Berger ABAM. City managed the design contract, and Berger ABAM completed design and brought plans and specifications to a 90% design level. The amendment retains Berger ABAM to complete the engineering design plans to include water utility design work and for any necessary construction services in the year of 2019 and 2020, assuring that our design engineer has oversight and input into the construction process. This amendment will increase the contract by $316,000 and provide approximately 20% of total contract dollars to certified minority, women, and emerging small business sub-consultants. In this slide, the total life budget for the project is $6.4 million. The construction is $4.6 million and is included in a $6.4 million total. The pie chart shows the drivers for change to the scope and budget over the 5 years to secure partnerships, grants, and refine the design. The original budget assumed the design of an open bottom culvert. The scope increase wedge is due to selecting a bridge alternative, After alternative analysis had been conducted between an open bottom culvert and a bridge, it was determined that the advisory committee and community wanted a bridge since the bridge scored higher on enhanced fish passage, pedestrian wildlife connectivity, and riparian zone and wetland values. The other blue wedge includes city staff coordination efforts with permitting and public involvement. These additional costs also include the mitigation of contaminated media that we encountered on site, whether it was going to be a culvert or a bridge. The escalation wedge is the 5 years it took to secure partnerships, grants, and refine the design. We are very excited to be completing our design phase of this project and would like to thank our partners for working with us to achieve this milestone. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much.
Looks great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any public testimony on this item?
4 people signed up to testify.
Very good.
Please come up, 3 at a time. Terry Prigg-Rigsby, Al Iverson, Hans Stooch.
Gentlemen, if
yeah, if you just want to take a seat. Thanks. Good presentation. Thank you. Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Well, it is that. Thank you for reminding me.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Terry Prigg-Rigsby. I'm the Executive Director of the Trine Creek Watershed Council, and I'm also Zone 5 Director and Board Chair of the West Multnomah Soil and Water Conservation District. So on behalf of both of those organizations, I urge you to vote in favor of this amendment. We've been working for decades to enhance and protect our watershed, and we consider this to be really the most important project going on in our watershed right now. As Amin mentioned, we are also actively pursuing the replacement of the culvert at Route 43. And so with the replacement of both of those culverts, we will open up the system again to native fish species. I'd also like to highlight the benefits to pedestrians. The connectivity that will be gained through this project will really bring more access to a part of the city that just doesn't have a lot of safe pedestrian access. We lack a lot of infrastructure there. So the benefits to the fish and wildlife and water quality, and also to our human neighbors, are both really important. And I'd also like to thank BES for being so inclusive in the process. I've been with the Watershed Council for 17 years now, and we've been hearing about this project. I've been hearing about it for that entire time, and it's been something that we've all wanted to accomplish. And as Amin said, for the last at least 5 years, there's been a really concerted effort to involve the community and learn what is the most important, best solution for not only fish and wildlife, but for the community. So that's it.
Thank you very much for your strong partnership.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure.
Good afternoon.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Al Iverson. I came here today because I'm on the Citizen Advisory Committee for the Boones Ferry Road Culvert Replacement Project, and I support this ordinance. By profession, I'm a civil and environmental engineer. I retired from BES 6 years ago. This CAC began meeting a little over 4 years ago when the project started. The committee included affected property owners and individuals from various organizations. The organizations represented are the Arnold Creek Neighborhood Association, Southwest Trails, Friends of Tryon Creek State Park, Tryon Creek Watershed Council, and Sweeney Neighborhoods Incorporated. Southwest Neighborhoods Incorporated, Sweeney. I represent Sweeney on the committee. Our earliest discussions were about how to replace the existing culvert and meet a variety of goals, from improving fish passage to pedestrian safety. It became clear that replacing the existing culvert with a new one would, at best, only marginally meet the various goals. So we asked staff to look at a bridge option rather than just replace the culvert. We were told by staff that this would increase cost and cause a delay of at least a year in the project. But after further discussion, we thought it was worth the delay and extra cost to have a project that met the stated goals. At the last CAC meeting, about a year and a half ago, the preliminary plans for the bridge were shown and described to us. We discussed what we were shown and enthusiastically approved the plan. I came here today to urge you to approve the ordinance for additional funding for this project, and I look forward to further CAC involvement as the project moves forward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you both.
And then the last two, Hans Stooch and Doug Rogers.
Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you.
Good afternoon. We've reached that point. I'm Doug Rogers, and I am the president of Southwest Trails. And we are a group of citizen volunteers. A lot of us wear gray hair, retired, have time to walk the hills of Southwest and enjoy the out of doors. And we're volunteers from the neighborhood associations and from all over, and we're very anxious that this project move ahead. We supported it from the beginning. And as a group, we've been involved for over 20 years, and the key issue here is safe connectivity, both for the fish and for the people. So that's why this is a winner for us all. And Hans is the local neighborhood and resident, and he has the details.
Yeah, hi, my name is Hans Stoik. I live in Southwest Portland, fairly close to where the Boones Ferry Culvert replacement project will take place. I pass that location, the intersection of Boones Ferry Road and Arnold Street, frequently, both on foot and by car. I am a volunteer with Southwest Trails, and it's mainly as such that I'm before you today. We work on the trail system in Southwest Portland, including Trail 6. Trail 6 starts at Goose Hollow downtown, goes south from there, and ends in Trine Creek State Natural Area. On its way, it passes through Marshall Park and Boones Ferry and the Boones Ferry Culvert Replacement Project area. Trail 6 is also part of a regional trail, number 24, as designated by Metro, also called the Hillsdale to Lake Oswego Trail. Southwest Trails have been active on the Boones Ferry Culvert Replacement Project Advisory Committee, the CAC, as Al referred to it. And in advocating for this project, we support the overarching environmental goals of the project of making improvement for fish and wildlife. Our main interest is for the subsidiary project goal of improving pedestrian connectivity between the city-owned Marshall Park and the state-owned Trine Creek Natural Area. Connectivity currently exists, but you have to cross busy Boones Ferry Road and walk on a narrow curb for 1/10 of a mile on the road to get to Trine Creek State Park. The culvert replacement project will eliminate these drawbacks by providing pedestrian passage under the roadway, stairs to the roadway, and a widened shoulder on the eastern side of Boones Ferry Road to the nearest trailhead, North Creek, in Trine Creek State Natural Area. This promises to be a much safer and attractive connection for pedestrians to move between parklands north and west of the Boones Ferry Road Arnold Street intersection and Trine Creek State Natural Area. So I urge you to also adopt this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, both of you. Does that conclude our public testimony, Sue? Colleagues, any further questions? Commissioner Fritz?
It's just a non-emergency ordinance, so we'll be voting on it next week. I just wanted to thank Amin Wahab, who was one of the original members of the Trine Creek Watershed Council back in 1994. Your service to the city over decades is really appreciated. Thank you, Terry Prigg-Wigsby, who was the volunteer chair of the Watershed Council for a very long time before she got to be executive director. And thank you to those who sat through several hours of other stuff this morning in order to be able to give you support for the project. We usually get people staying if they want to oppose something. So it's really nice that you took the time to stay and comment in support of this. And I'm really excited, Commissioner Fish. We serve citywide, and I had absolutely nothing to do with this. But I have to say, if I had a pet project, this would be one of them. Right. So thank you very much. I'm really excited to seeing it happening.
Thank you for your kind words.
Very good. Thank you, everybody, and thanks for your testimony. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Next item, 281.
Item 281, authorize the Portland Water Bureau to purchase property at 40730 Southeast Latago Lane, Sandy, Oregon, for $425,000 to protect easements for conduits from the Bull Run water supply and authorize portion of the property for disposition.
Commissioner Fish.
Colleagues, we're joined by the Director, Mike Stewart, today, Director of the Portland Water Bureau, and he has a very brief presentation for us. Here's the background. During routine maintenance, the Portland Water Bureau became aware of a house listed for sale at 40730 Southeast Latigo Lane that encroaches in the Water Bureau's easement near its conduits from Bull Run Lake. The Water Bureau has negotiated with the property owner, the Standard family, to purchase the property to protect the Water Bureau's easement and conduits. This ordinance, if approved, would allow the Water Bureau to purchase the property for $425,000. The purchase price is based on the appraised price of $450,000 minus the Water Bureau's administrative and inspection costs of $25,000. The Standard family has indicated they would be willing to accept this offer. After purchasing the property, the Water Bureau intends to remove the encroachments, secure its facilities, and sell the remaining property with additional easement restrictions. City disposition policy waived by council action. That's actually interesting. That's not a complete sentence. We'll have to ask Mike what he meant by that.
Will be. Love it when that happens.
Yeah, it's like, it's late. The total, let's just skim right over that section and hope no one's paying attention. The total cost of the project is $450,000, with some of the costs being offset with the proceeds from the property sale. Funding is available as part of the Conduits Transmission Water Program, which has a budget of $3.6 million for fiscal year 2017-2018. No change in the forecast water rates is anticipated to complete the purchase, nor are there any additional operations and maintenance expenses anticipated. Director Stewart.
So Commissioner Fish is, I'm Mike Stewart, I'm the Director of the Water Bureau. I'm joined by Tom Klutz, our property manager. I'll just clarify a few things. If you look at the picture, my little arrow is circling the house in question. It's a little bit difficult to see, but the corner of the house and a big retaining wall right here are sitting literally on top of conduit 4. The house was built in 1974. It was not built by the current owners. We have gone and checked with other bureaus. This house is roughly 30 miles from here. It's maybe a mile or two from Dodge Park, kind of out in the boonies. It's horse property. None of the other bureaus were interested. What the commissioner is referring to on, yeah, it's amazing. What the commissioner was referring to about waiving the council policy, normally we would have to go through a process of checking with everybody formally, toting it up, and then making the property available for sale. What we're really asking in this ordinance is two things: authority to buy the property for $425,000, and when we have dealt with the encroachment, basically demolish the house, turn right around and sell it. And this ordinance authorizes both things. The buyer or the owner of the property is willing, we're actually helping them. We have a willing buyer, willing seller situation. And that's basically all I have, pending your questions.
Commissioner Fritz.
When it's sold, the new owner will be able to build another home, just not right where that one is.
Yes, ma'am. We hope not. And now that we know, we'll keep an eye on it. We are going to expand the easement that's on the property, make it a little bit wider. If we were going to do work on conduit 4 or it broke right there, this would be a kind of a disaster waiting to happen.
But presumably would give them an easement so that they could have a driveway across the conduit.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Just like that one is, it allows them to do normal things, just not build a house on top.
Very good.
Thank you, Mike.
Is there any public testimony on this item?
Shedrick Wilkins wanted to say a few words.
Very good. Good afternoon.
I'm Shedrick Wilkins, and I have my hearings came back a lot, but okay, I'm Shedrick Wilkins. Is this the ideal location for a UV filtration plant? Is this where most of the water comes in?
This is not where we're planning to do our...
Do a filtration thing. So on the issue of water, I'm not too sure people want to have their water filtered. but given the February 2017 situation where we got into the Columbia wells, I think we need to speed up some sort of UV, ultraviolet light to make up for the fact that we don't draw water from the reservoirs, and people made arguments that the light from the sun filters the water. So I think we need to speed that up, and I'm not sure that Portland will ever filter the water.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Next item, 282.
282, authorize an agreement with Sound Transit and purchase agreement with Brookville Equipment Corporation for the purchase of streetcar vehicles using a sole source procurement in amount not to exceed $10 million.
Commissioner Saltzman.
Thank you, Mayor. As Portland continues to grow, the Portland Bureau of Transportation is focused on strategies and projects that will help accommodate that growth and maintain Portland's quality of life. And improving the reliability of public transit is one of the best ways to reduce automobile congestion, and that we are all dealing with today. And approval of this council item will go a long way in that regard. Since opening in 2001, Portland Streetcar has seen its service and ridership grow exponentially. And that growth has been directly attributed to housing production in the central city, and we may need to make sure that this continues. Therefore, our great partner, TriMet, and Portland Streetcar, Inc. have identified a need to acquire additional streetcars to support ridership and continued frequent service. And Catherine Levine from PUDL is here to walk us through this purchasing proposal.
Thank you very much for your consideration today. I can go into more detail, but I'll move very quickly to begin. In February, as we told you during the annual report, we highlighted the need to have additional vehicles to support reliable, frequent transit service. Previously, we had discussed the most cost-effective means to increase the fleet by 5 vehicles was looking at purchasing 2 new vehicles and 3 used vehicles. Today, this action is focused on the purchase of the 2 new vehicles. In 2017, Tacoma, our sister streetcar city to the north, ran a open competitive procurement process for streetcar vehicles, and they included within that the option for Portland to purchase vehicles. In July of last year, we brought to you a cooperative procurement agreement with Sound Transit so that if the council approved, we could use that procurement as a means of purchasing the cars. The purpose of this ordinance is to execute an assignment agreement, basically accepting the options from Sound Transit, and to authorize a contract with Brookville. It is listed as a sole source. However, we have obviously worked in partnership with Sound Transit to get to this point. I did want to let you know procedurally, procurement did post a notice, as they're required to do, that we intended to enter into this contract with Brookville and that no protests were received.
Very good.
Thank you.
Colleagues, any further questions?
Brookville is in Pennsylvania?
That's correct. This is our opportunity to purchase American-made cars.
Right.
Yeah.
Public testimony?
Shedrick Wilkins.
Come on up, sir.
Yeah, my view was when they made light rail, this is kind of an east-west thing, but when they started the loop, they got involved with the north-south thing. And I remember when 2012, before that, there was an argument that traffic would hit the streetcars. It did not happen as far as I know. There's like, they're going this way. I think in Portland there's a big issue about southeast Portland and a little bit into Sandy Boulevard. My father went to Nabisco 5 miles away, and my first job was not in, I was raised in 70th and Sandy. My first job was downtown. And there really isn't a job market, but there's a lot of housing in southeast Portland. So I really would think we need to expand and do experiments about putting streetcars down 82nd. You know, I don't know if they'd be elevated or not, or 39th Street. So you're getting into southeast Portland, where people, they don't work there, but they go somewhere. Maybe they could take, and then of course the streetcars would intersect with light rail. and then they would go downtown.
Thanks, Cedric.
Because that's the thing, is Southeast Portland is a real residential area. There's no jobs, and they work other places, and they need to get there.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Thank you for your work. I think the streetcar is, we heard earlier that transit ridership has gone down, but yours, streetcars, has not. It's gone up. 32% of the riders earn less than $30,000 a year, so the myth that it's just a train toy for rich people is absolutely not true. And most people are using it to get to and from home and work. So it's a really splendid example of not only a development tool, but also a transportation mechanism that is working for a lot of people. Thank you very much for your work on it. Aye.
Thank you. Fish.
Aye.
Salzman.
Thank you, Catherine, and also thanks to Dan Bauer, the CEO of Portland Streetcar Inc. Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you. Next item, 283.
283, authorize contracts as required with 23 service firms for architecture and engineering services in support of Portland Bureau of Transportation Capital Improvement Program.
Commissioner Saltzman.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll just turn it over to procurement.
Very good. Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, commissioners.
Nope, that train left a long time ago. It's definitely afternoon.
Okay.
Don't tease us.
Well, when you're taking a nap out here, you see, you lose track.
Your moment to shine.
Larry, thanks very much.
Larry, your time is up. I move the item, Mayor.
Oh, no, he's not. Okay, let's start it with this. Happy second day of spring. How does that sound?
That's awesome.
There we go.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Larry Palat from Procurement Services. You have before you the ordinance. It's through a procurement report recommending 23 price agreements to be awarded to 12 separate firms for a total amount, $26,875,000. This is a small point of clarification. The actual ordinance piece said 23 firms, but there's 12 firms, some of them getting more than one contract in different areas of work. So just a little piece of clarification. These price agreements are for a 3-year period, will be utilized as the needs are presented and specific projects are identified in PBOT's budget. And the price agreements range in total value from $500,000 to $2.5 million, with task orders within those agreements limited to between $175,000 on some and up to $500,000 on some others. On September 6, 2017, the Chief Procurement Officer advertised RFP number 69948. Proposals in 8 categories of work were received and opened October 2nd. All proposals were deemed responsive to the requirements of solicitation. The proposals were evaluated in smaller groups based on different work areas by 3 different evaluation teams. All the evaluation teams had at least one community member, an individual through the Minority Evaluator Program. I'm just calling out, there was a lot of hard work in the evaluations on this. There was a lot of stuff to read. So it's just kind of an extra thank you to all the members of the evaluation teams, especially the community members through the MEP program. The city issued a notice of intent to award the price agreements on December 18th. No protests were received. This procurement has a particularly interesting story behind it. The entire procurement process is the result of a variation on our standard solicitation process, which was piloted by the Bureau of Transportation a little over a year ago. The standard methodology requires consultants to propose what their utilization of certified firms will be in their actual proposal. What we moved forward with the pilot thought process is not to have them identify specific certified firms, because under these types of agreements, the work itself is not identified. Projects come and go through the budget process, so you don't really know what it is. So what PBOT decided and worked with us, it's kind of a very, very good joint effort a couple years ago, was having the firms propose what their thought process is relative to inclusion. Tell us about some of the people you traditionally use. How do you plan to move this procurement stuff, the participation stuff, forward when we're not really telling you exactly what work you're going to do? It's a difficult process. So what we did is we said, we'll take your thought process. Then when we get the price agreements together, we start issuing task orders against these price agreements. That's when we come back and the PBOT then they know what the work is, the project is identified, and they can hold the consultants responsible to a much higher level of participation.
That's interesting.
On the pilot project, the first one that they did, their setup was to achieve the city's goal of 20%. That was their driver. They actually got to just shy of 28% by having additional negotiation. The negotiations for each task order, there was a huge focus on participation in that. And if PBOT doesn't think that the particular vendor's doing enough, they can ask them to do more. They can say, we can't quite get there with this one, we're going to go to the next vendor.
So is that where you're getting the 8 million?
Yeah, it is. If we utilize the full value of the contracts at a little over 26 million, and we get to the 30%, that's the big piece with this one. PBOT raised the goal from 20% to 30% participation. So if we use the whole thing, get the 30%, it's over $8 million that go to certified firms.
And what sort of enforcement mechanism is not exactly the right word, but how do you ensure that you're going to get that 8.62 million?
What the process is, then when they issue a task order, they have a specific project. So they know there are certified firms who can do pieces of that project, and that's when they negotiate with the prime vendor on, okay, you're saying you're going to self-perform this piece of work, but we know there's certified firms out there who can do that. We would like you to include them in this task order.
Okay, so would you say that 8 million is a guaranteed deliverable? How would you characterize it?
No, it's an aspirational goal.
Okay.
It is backed up by the negotiation. There was one more little interesting piece to this solicitation process. All of the proposers had to sign an agreement that said they know about the 30% goal and they agreed to utilize all possible means to reach or exceed that goal. So it's not a surprise to them. Okay. When they walk into this, they know they're going to be held at that 30%. Now, because we don't have a diversity study that lets us set hard goals, these are aspirational goals, but everybody's very aware of how important this is to you as council members and the city as a whole to get to this participation level. As I said, on the last one, they started out with a goal of 20 and got to 28 by virtue of hard work and negotiating with the vendors and telling the vendors, hey, this is what we need you to do. And it's very successful. Great. Some of the other utility bureaus are moving forward on the same type of thought process, the newer methodology. We don't have enough data to say, wow, this is super successful. Everything we've got so far says it is. And if everything works, and it's mostly a lot of hard work on the part of transportation, but if everything works, this should become the new methodology to get us on these types of price agreements. This should get us better, much, much better participation.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's the backstory. Really quickly.
I don't want to be accused of blowing a quorum here, but I have to go. So I don't know if you have the requisite votes.
I believe we.
I am essentially done. We're asking for approval here. I'm good.
Good. Is there any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
Fritz, any further comments?
No, I just need Commissioner Fish for the last item.
Call the roll.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Salzman.
Thank you. Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. That leaves us with 2 consent agenda items, 273.
273, authorize an additional position under the Open and Accountable Elections Program within the Office of Neighborhood Involvement.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you. Who pulled this, please, Sue?
Marianne Schwab and Lightning.
And neither of them are here. Does anybody want to testify on this? Okay, this says an additional position, but it's actually the first position to be hired for the program. Normally this would be done through the budget or the budget monitoring process, but we're a year behind where we want it to be. It's urgent that we get this position created and filled as quickly as possible. I can't wait until the spring bump to do this. The position is being created in the Office of Neighbourhood Involvement because the Open and Accountable Elections Fund is still in the Office of Neighbourhood Involvement until it is moved to special appropriations as part of the budget process. And that will also happen in the spring budgeting monitoring process. The success of program implementation in time for the 2020 election is in question. Every day of delay makes it more difficult to complete the work that is necessary for successful implementation of this adopted council program. I urge your support, colleagues.
And the individuals who signed up for public testimony are no longer here. Commissioner Saltzman, do you have a question?
So the total staffing is 2 for the opening
It
calendar?
will be, yes, this is the first position.
The first position, okay.
Very good. Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish. Salzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Wheeler.
All right, the ordinance is adopted. 275.
Thank you, Commissioner Salzman.
275, authorize a sole source contract with Go Lloyd to fund transportation projects and programs in the Lloyd District. This was pulled by Commissioner Salzman's office to be referred to his office.
Yes, if you could refer that back to my office, please.
Very good. Unless I missed something, that's it. We are adjourned until 2 p.m.